I am broadcasting live from the nation's capital when River Song Productions once again presents A Matter of Life. Today's show will feature highlights from the 2015 March for Life, as well as a host of leaders who will be introduced on this show and interviewed. These are the leaders in the forefront of the battle for life, the right to life. I am joined today with my co-host, President of the National Right to Life, Carol Tobias. Carol, I'm so excited to have you here with me, co-hosting this show.
I'm thrilled to be here.
Thank you. The excitement out there on the streets has been amazing as throngs of people from across the country join together to say that life is sacred. Womb to tomb, life is sacred. We are here to defend life, to present to our political leaders here at the Capitol that we are a pro-life nation and we will continue to stand for life. Carol, thank you so much. What was the feeling that you had today out on the streets?
The crowd that was there for the rally was massive. I have no idea how you would count those numbers. What was as impressive, though, were the number of people that maybe couldn't get close to the rally, so they were lining the streets between the rally and the Capitol, and it was incredible. People are so concerned about protecting unborn babies that they are taking their time and using their resources to come to Washington to make that statement, to be a part of this huge protest against Roe v. Wade in the Supreme Court decision.
Yes, and that's what today is about. It's the 42nd anniversary of that dreadful decision, Roe versus Wade, legalizing abortion in our country. And people came across the nation. We found out one group came from Fargo, North Dakota, Julia Johnson, the entire school. I'm just getting reports, and the entire school, Shanley High School, came carrying their banner. They led the March for Life, carrying their banner.
North Dakota is my home state.
So really?
We're very proud of them.
Well represented here
we're
today.
Very proud of
An
them.
entire school, 400 kids came and carried that banner. And what's so wonderful for me, I've been coming for decades. Of course, I started when I was 3. I'm kidding. But the march grows older and the march grows younger as our youth pick up those banners and stand in defense of life. River Song Productions is a Christian broadcasting group, and they are committed to bringing the truth to the people, to giving that media coverage that we don't always see. Now we're going to go out to the rally with live reports, and are we leaving the area, and we're going to see some of the interviews out there on the streets.
Hi, I'm with Marie Miller, who just sang her heart out on stage. Marie, could you tell us a little bit of how you feel about pro-life?
I feel very, very strongly about being pro-life. I think that it's amazing to see so many young people out here today, because I think we're seeing that the tides are changing and that this is the pro-life generation. So I'm very, very excited to be a part of it.
Mm-hmm, definitely. And you being a young person yourself, you can kind of relate to the crowd. And the songs that you sing, it's like a message in it. Just like gather together and then support one another.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's amazing. It's so cool. It's so cool to have people like you too that are doing media that are getting the message out. It's awesome.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too.
Welcome back to A Matter of Life. I understand we're experiencing some technical difficulties, but we are joined right now by Congressman Lou Barletta from Pennsylvania by teleconferencing. So welcome, Congressman. Are you there?
I am. It's nice to talk to you.
So nice to talk with you. It's been an exciting day today. Can you tell the audience about some of the legislation that you're looking at? But first of all, I do want to thank you for being so constantly pro-life and so willing to stand up and be a voice for the voiceless.
Well, thank you. I'm never going. That's an easy position for me to take, and I'm thankful that I have an opportunity to go to Washington and actually vote and fight for the sanctity of life. I'm very proud that I have a 100% record voting pro-life, and I'm going to continue to do that and be a voice for those that don't have a voice. I'm father of 4 daughters, so I know how what the value of life is and how beautiful it is to have a family. So
Thank you. Yes.
Today was a good day in the House. In the House we passed the no taxpayer funding for abortion, and that's a good thing. We're beginning to move the ball. Now that we have a Republican House and Republican Senate, hopefully we're going to be able to get some of this legislation through Congress and to the President. We weren't able to get and I'm a co-sponsor of the Pain Capable Unborn Child Protection Act.
Thank you so much for that. I know today we will have on our show Dr. Tony Levantino, who will talk about his role in advancing that legislation. But thank you so much for your standing up for that vote. What happened today with that?
Well, there was some controversy. I shouldn't say controversy. There was some discussions and disagreements on whether or not we should move forward with that legislation in this bill. I was one that wanted to see it, wanted it to be part of it, but it's not done. We're going to continue to fight to get that legislation to the floor because I believe it's so important. Now that we have studies and facts that the unborn can feel the pain at 20 weeks, this has to be our next victory. So we were able to pass the no taxpayer funding.
That's so important to us.
For abortion, which is a good step. It's a good step for life, and hopefully now we can continue pushing for the Pain Capable Unborn Child Protection Act.
Congressman, this is Carol Tobias. I'm the president of National Right to Life, and we actually did not have a chance to be introduced or for me to say hi to you before we went live on the show. But I want to thank you so much for your pro-life support in Congress, for your vote today. We very much appreciate that. We appreciate your sponsorship of the Pain Capable Unborn Child Protection Act. We're very grateful for everything that you are doing to protect the babies in Congress.
Well, believe me, it's something that's in my heart, and it's easy to do. It was beautiful today to see. Pictures are worth 1,000 words, and there's not a protest, there's not a march, there's not a gathering that has the impact as the March for Life does when everyone comes from around the country to Washington. And I had an opportunity to talk to those from Pennsylvania who were here in Washington today, and I'm proud to stand arm in arm with them and be a voice fighting for the unborn.
Thank you, Congressman Lou Barletta, who has been a constant champion of our cause, a constant voice speaking on behalf of the unborn and really on behalf of women. For we know that the damage that is done to women through abortion. Congressman, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. It's always nice to talk, and thank you for what you're doing.
Thanks so much.
Yes.
We are going to go right out to the rally with some live reports. We're joined by Mary Vick, who I believe is at the Supreme Court.
From St. Marie Parish in Manchester, New Hampshire. Holy Family Academy is one of the schools.
Okay, great. And what drives you guys all the way here to Washington to March for Life?
I'm going to let you speak.
Well, we want to we don't want abortion to happen anymore, and we're all pro-life, so we're come here to march.
And as a child, how do you understand this whole process? What do you get out of it?
What do you mean? Like,
What do you? It's having a baby. What do you understand out of it?
well, it's not something that you can just kill. It's a baby, and it's not just a bunch of cells put together. It's a real person, and you can't just kill it.
Great, thank you. How do you feel? One more question. How do you feel that Roe versus Wade, a trademark case, changed the way that they rule over abortion nowadays?
Roe versus Wade has been the downside of our United States of America. Really, we need to get back to building a culture of life, and we're here to start and we will never ever give up.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on A Matter of Life. We are going to go to a break now, and when we come back, we'll be joined by Dr. Donna Harrison, who is the Executive Director of Obstetricians and Gynecologists for Life.
We had to get it in this. Schools. And we had to break down the natural modesty, and we had to separate them from their parents and their values. And the easiest way to do that is sex education.
That's what the 27th edition of Stedman's Medical Dictionary came out, and they redefined conception.
When you teach a generation that at the very beginning of life is insignificant, then as they get older, they could very possibly have the mentality that no life is significant.
We've gone through an education system and we've been taught evolution and everything happens by natural processes. Well, it's just an animal anyway. You're just an animal. I'm just an animal. These people, they know that they're killing a human being, but we're just animals. And we have a right to do what we want to do, don't we? Don't we own our bodies?
To A Matter of Life. I'm joined here with my co-host Carol Tobias from National Right to Life, and now we are going to bring on a guest, Dr. Donna Harrison. Dr. Harrison is the Director of Research and Public Policy with the American Association of Pro-Life Obstetricians and Gynecologists. Thank you so much for being with us, Dr. Harrison. I know today's theme is Every Life is a Gift, and your group especially has a strong message. Welcome to A Matter of Life. Thank you.
Thanks for having me on. Okay. Yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about the women in abortion, because we talk a lot about the babies, and we all know that the unborn babies are destroyed in abortion, but women are also destroyed in abortion. And they're destroyed in ways that they aren't even given consent, true informed consent before an abortion. Women need to know that abortion increases their risk of preterm birth in a next pregnancy. It increases their risk of depression and suicide. And something that a lot of women don't know is that if they abort babies before they have their first baby, they are also at increased risk of breast cancer. So those are the things that I think it's important that women know about how abortion affects them.
Right. These are all very important points. I'd like to talk a little bit more about the suicide factor, because we hear abortion is safe, and they're not looking at the long-term impact that it has on women.
No, they're not. And it's pretty clear when you look at countries where they actually own the medical record, that women who abort versus women who give birth, even in babies that are unwanted or unplanned, women who abort those babies versus women who give birth are at increased risk of depression and suicide. And why is that? We are biologically wired to love that baby, and that bonding happens the moment we hear that we've got a positive pregnancy test. There was a really sad study that came out of the Scandinavian countries of women in abortion clinics who talked to their babies and rubbed their belly, because even though they're going to terminate the life of that baby, they are still bonded to that baby. And that bonding is real, and it's biochemical, and it has big consequences, especially in a society that says, you didn't lose anything, you have nothing to grieve, when in fact they know they lost someone, and they know that they need to grieve, but they can't grieve it because society says you haven't lost anything. So I think the very fact that we know that there's a baby in there that was and now is not, we can actually bring a message of healing and help to these women. But women who don't hear that message of healing and help, they despair. And sometimes, unfortunately, they decide to end that despair with suicide. So it's a big problem, and we need to get the message out. There is help, there is healing for these women.
You know, I think that's so important to stress this, because I am for women's rights. I will always stand up for women's rights. But you know what? We have done so much damage to womanhood and to our own femininity. To, you know, God allowed us to be co-creators in life as a mother. And when we destroy that miraculous, wonderful gift, something hurts us so deep inside. I know one time working in recovery, I was with a woman who had a hysterectomy, and you know, she was younger than I, like maybe in her 50s, but after the hysterectomy, as she was coming through anesthesia, she was saying something about, this is God's retaliation to me for my abortion. And afterwards, I had the opportunity to talk with this woman who said that she never had an issue with it. She really didn't think about it. But it must have been so deep in her heart, this wound of and the guilt that she was feeling, that she would feel as she came out of anesthesia and was feeling the pain, that somehow God was retaliating.
And we know God doesn't retaliate.
Right.
He doesn't want anyone to feel this kind. Death wasn't part of the plan. So what do we do to bring that message of health and healing? You know, I'm as much for women getting equal pay for equal work as anybody else. I grew up a feminist. But I think the feminist movement got completely derailed when they said we have to maim and castrate ourselves to fit into a society. We can't be the women that we were designed to be. I think we really want to stray with that. And I'm looking forward to, you know, working together to bring a society where women's femininity and our ability to give and nurture life is valuable and is beautiful and is celebrated, which is the way we should be. I mean, that's why I'm an OB-GYN doctor, because I think life is beautiful and women are just wonderful people, and we have a beautiful gift that we need to be celebrating. And so, you know, that's part of the message that I'm hoping that we all can work together to.
Why is there so much opposition in the pro-abortion community to recognize any kind of link between abortion and breast cancer?
Well, because the abortion industry is about money, and if women really understand how a pregnancy can actually help them, then they would be less likely to abort, and that would mean less money for the abortionist. So it's all about money, and unfortunately it goes back to money. And this link between abortion and breast cancer is pretty important, because the women in our culture who are getting abortions are those who abort in their teens and early 20s and then delay childbearing. That puts them in the absolute highest risk category. The lowest risk category for breast cancer are those women who have when they get pregnant, they deliver their babies in their 20s and then, you know, breastfeed. So delivering your baby and breastfeeding that is the absolute best thing you can do to lower your risk of breast cancer. And we've known that having a baby in the 20s and breastfeeding is a protective for breast cancer. We've known that for 40 years, but it's very quiet because it's not politically correct to say, hey, let's celebrate life, let's be the women we're supposed to be. So I think that's an important thing that women need to know for their own protection.
I think one of the things that strikes me is breast cancer in our Black population and with Black women. And as we have seen abortion increasing in the black population, so too we see a dramatic increase in the number of black women coming, inflicted with breast cancer, and also a reduced age. They're younger victims of breast cancer. And so I think it's so important, this is a civil rights issue, it's a human rights issue, and we have to get it out there for what it is, and recognizing that we look at our sisters, we look at the black population and say to them, we want more for you, we want better for you, you deserve better than this. And so, we present this truth through this kind of programming, and thank you so much for bringing that aspect. I think one thing people did not realize how encompassing Roe versus Wade was. They thought it was the first 3 months, and Planned Parenthood would dub it the product of conception, the POC. Can you speak to Roe versus Wade, and how did physicians become involved in an industry like this?
Well, again, it's money. What I can say is, back in the history, our history, the history of the American Association of Pro-Life OBGYNs, there were a lot of us who were intimately involved in the leadership of the National Organization of OBGYNs, which is ACOG, American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists. ACOG, the leadership of ACOG was divided, and ACOG was actually formative in influencing the Supreme Court to vote the way they did for Roe versus Wade. But among that leadership, there was a division, and the pro-life leadership of the college said, we cannot allow the only professional voice to be pro-abortion. And that's where my organization started. We started back at the very beginning of the division in ACOG. And we have been there to be a pro-life professional voice at every time ACOG files an amicus brief, we try to file an amicus brief as well. We speak for those pro-life physicians who need a voice. And in fact, 85% of OBGYNs do not perform abortions. And yet our national college says that they speak for us when they've never ever pulled their membership. We actually represent the actual voice of the practicing obstetrician gynecologist.
How about the Hippocratic Oath, this wonderfully beautiful oath?
Well, this is
says,
something
I will not administer, I will do no harm, I will not administer an abortifacient drug.
This is something most people don't realize, is that the taking of the Hippocratic Oath died in the 70s and 80s. My class at the University of Michigan was one of the last to be offered the opportunity to take the Hippocratic Oath. And that is because when you take the oath, you promise, I will not have sex with my patients, I won't take advantage of them, I won't kill them, and I won't give them an abortion. And those are really important, and they were the foundation of medical ethics for 2,000 years until the 1970s in this country, at which time there was a commitment to bring in abortion, and now we see a commitment to bring in euthanasia and to eliminate people that are not, politically acceptable. So in order to do that, the medical community had to get rid of the Hippocratic Oath. So we are part of teaming with Catholic Medical Association to bring back in the Hippocratic Oath and offer opportunities for medical students to take the Hippocratic Oath.
Wow. Very beautiful, very beautiful. I think that you've been a tremendous voice for women, for womankind. And but the one group that always my heart aches for them is men who have lost their fatherhood. They do not have to sign a paper consenting to the death of their child. Is that correct?
Well, that's correct. And one thing I learned in medical school, women don't get pregnant by themselves. So this unique human being that they have, that this woman carries in her womb, is genetically half somebody else. And fathers grieve just as much as mothers grieve. They grieve in a different way. They aren't as biologically connected, but certainly fatherhood is an opportunity for joy and pride in a lot of men. And that joy and pride is taken away from them. They're basically emasculated by this decision, and Roe versus Wade, and also the decision to eliminate their child.
Right.
And it's not just a woman's child that's eliminated. It's someone's grandchild. It's
Right.
someone's nephew. It's someone's niece. It's someone's brother and sister. So we are, as human beings, in relationship to each other, and killing one of us affects all of us.
I thank you so much for this interview. Do we
I was going to ask one more question. I'm just curious, medical students that want to be OBGYNs, do they have to participate in an abortion or observe an abortion, watch an abortion? Are they still allowed to object, say I don't want to do it? Does it affect them as to whether or not they can go on? I mean, just what is the situation for a medical student?
I'm glad you asked that, because right now it depends on the medical school that you're training in. There are some states that are rabidly pro-abortion, like New York. It's very difficult to find a residency program in New York. There are other states in the Midwest where there are residency programs. But our right of conscience is very much under attack right now, just like the right of conscience of the American people are under attack
Exactly.
because of the Affordable Care Act. Our right of conscientious objection for healthcare providers, not just doctors, but nurses, PAs, midwives, is under tremendous attack here and worldwide. And we're hoping, the one thing that the viewers can do, one thing you can do to help with this, is to ask your doctor, are you pro-life? And wake up the medical community to the fact that this is a big issue and they do need to be taking a stand. Because if we don't have medical people speaking up for their own right of conscience, it can disappear.
So students can object to the abortion, medical students, and it may or may not impact where they go or where they practice?
They can object to the abortion, but it depends on the state how they object to it, whether or not that's successful. And there's a program with a group that we work with, Alliance Defending Freedom, practical protection of conscience. So if any medical student wants to know, they could email me at prolifeob@gmail.com, and I would be happy to connect them.
Thank you so much. You have just been such a wonderful advocate. You have been a voice for the voiceless. You have been a voice for womankind. And so I appreciate Dr. Donna Harrison's presence on the show. And good luck, Doctor, because you have a job ahead of you. Yeah, thank you. Thanks so much. We're going to be right back after this brief commercial break. Thank you.
Welcome back. We are here now with Frank Mannion with the American Center for Law and Justice. We were just speaking with Dr. Donna Harrison, and we ended talking about the conscience clause problems that some medical students and some doctors would have. So we're going to continue with the whole conscience issue and toss it to Frank. You do some lawsuits, some cases on conscience. Why don't you just start off and tell us about it?
Really, conscience protection of medical professionals has become kind of my subspecialty over the past decade and a half. I got into the work with the ACLJ because I wanted to do pro-life legal work. And the ACLJ as a whole has done quite a bit of that, both at the Supreme Court and in the lower courts. But for whatever reason, I got many of the conscience cases, which are typically a doctor, a nurse, a pharmacist, lots of pharmacists, someone in the medical field, even tangentially, who doesn't want to participate in some aspect, usually a tiny part of a job, because of conscientious objection to something normally related to abortion. With any other area of the law, you have mixed results. You win some, you lose some. I think on the whole we win more than we lose. But it's an ever-present danger for anybody in the medical field. And you heard Dr. Harrison just before talking about what it's like for a young OBGYN trying to find a residency, particularly in a state where it's almost unavailable if you're pro-life. And of course, while there are laws on the books that protect the right of conscience of medical professionals, they don't mean anything unless they're enforced. And the only way they get enforced, unfortunately, is with lawsuits or threats of lawsuits. I heard Dr. Harrison talking about, the laws are there, but in some states they're not effective. And part of the problem with that is they're not enforced, and it takes people to enforce them. I do think, though, that it's somewhat encouraging, though, that the laws have been present on the books since Roe v. Wade. Sort of in the immediate aftermath of Roe v. Wade, and there were enough, at least at the time, pro-life voices in Congress and elsewhere to say, it's one thing for the Supreme Court to, by fiat, make this legal, but you can't conscript the rest of the country into participating in it. So that's what those conscience laws do. Again, they don't mean much if they're not enforced, and so that's what we lawyers have to do, is
How
to
does
enforce them.
Obamacare influence, our conscience rights and religious freedom?
Right, it has muddied the water considerably.
Yeah.
We saw that in the whole Hobby Lobby so-called litigation of the past couple of years. We at the ACLJ actually filed the first challenge to the HHS mandate on behalf of a for-profit business. Hobby Lobby is the one that got to the Supreme Court, so that's the one that everybody knows. But there were something like 40 separate businesses challenged that, most of the time on the grounds that the mandate required employers to pay for abortifacients. And I know that there's some controversy even in the medical community over whether these things really are abortifacient or not, there's certainly research that goes both ways, quite frankly. But for a conscientious business owner who has come to the conclusion in his or her own conscience that this does cause abortion or has a substantial risk of causing abortion, it's a serious moral issue. And so the government, in the case of the HHS mandate and the Hobby Lobby cases, basically was conscripting private business owners to do something against their religious beliefs. And I was at the oral argument at the Supreme Court in the Hobby Lobby case, and I'll never forget what happened there, among many other things that happened there. Justice Kennedy, who, as we know, has been wishy-washy at best on the abortion issue, looked at the Solicitor General, who was defending the HHS mandate, and said, as if it had just dawned on him, are you saying that the government could tell a business owner that they must pay for surgical abortions, even late-term abortions? And the Solicitor General, representing the government, could only honestly say, yes, that's what we're saying. Right. And I think you could kind of see the light bulb go off on over Justice Kennedy's head. And a few months later, of course, the Supreme Court ruled that private business owners of closely held corporations do not have to pay for these kinds of things that they believe cause abortions. So that was a big victory last year.
We do have to stay vigilant because there is a bill that has been introduced into the United States Senate, the so-called Women's Health Protection Act. And one of the provisions of that bill would be to wipe out the Conscience Clause protection for medical personnel who don't want to be involved in abortion.
Exactly. It's amazing, but the abortion industry hates conscience clauses. They call them refusal clauses. Right. And they issue charts indicating which states have the worst, quote unquote, refusal clauses. But really, and the sad part is, there was a time in the immediate aftermath of Roe where there was a consensus in society in general, I think, and certainly in Congress, that we do have to, if we're going to have abortion on demand, which was, of course, the actual impact of Roe v. Wade, we at least have to protect the right of conscience of those who find it morally abhorrent. And that's the danger of seeing that slip away. And I think in the past 6 or 7 years, that is what reared its ugly head, both in Obamacare and some places of it and outside of it. It's a whole mindset that we're not going to put up with these people who refuse to participate. And that simply goes against everything we stand for as Americans.
I think of 35 years ago when I, as a nurse, found a child. His name is John. I found a child after he had been aborted, and I spent time with him. I baptized him. I know at the hospital I was working, they called it mismanagement of time to spend time with John.
Wow.
Little would they know that 35 years later, I'm still there with John and he's with me. But I think of it now, if we reverse that situation, my job would certainly be in jeopardy more than mismanagement of time.
Right, and I have represented nurses in that situation where the employer did fire or threaten to fire them for making that stand. And as you know, having worked in the medical field, it's harder for the nurse or the intern or the person lower on the ladder to take the moral stand than it is for the doctor. The doctors, more or less, depending on what setting they work in, can say what they are going to do and not do. The nurses, the residents, the interns have a harder time, and that's who we usually hear from, the people who don't have that sort of clout in the medical field.
Well, I think as a medical person, you go in there and you're full of idealism and enthusiasm, and when you see yourself confronted with this situation, to become part of the killing industry.
Exactly.
It's such a wound in your heart
Exactly.
to even think that you would be part of it.
And many people in the field don't know that there are legal protections for them. And they've been on the books since Roe v. Wade. Again, they're only as strong as the enforcement of them. And sometimes, obviously, the employment situation is very delicate for people. Do I make a fuss and get fired? Sure, I can file a lawsuit, but that won't be resolved for 2 or 3 years, and maybe I won't win. And that's all true.
Right.
That's why I have the no end of admiration for people who take that stand, because they really are in the front lines, and they do really have to put their necks on the line sometimes.
Right, right.
Well, besides the conscience cases, what else are you working on that you'd like to share with us?
Sure. Well, we at the ACLJ have a case that we have up on petition for certiorari at the Supreme Court right now, involving crisis pregnancy centers in New York. There's been, again, this whole idea that we will not tolerate any dissent from this pro-abortion mandate manifests itself in connection with crisis pregnancy centers, where cities and towns and some states even are trying to pass laws that essentially require the crisis pregnancy center to put a sign over the door that says, "I'd turn back if I were you." You know, you don't want to come in here.
We don't have the professional
right,
doctor, and
exactly.
we don't do abortions.
Right.
And
you basically have to imagine asking a business to put a sign out front that says, "What you don't provide." No business would stand for that. It's, well, we want the customer to come in, and if what they're looking for is here, great. If not, they'll find out and go somewhere else. But it's really onerous, the type of regulations, and deliberately so, because we know that Planned Parenthood and others in the abortion industry have made an issue of closing down crisis pregnancy centers. And why? Because they work, because they do succeed in changing minds.
they're cutting into the profits.
They're cutting
too.
into the profits, and that's obviously what it's all about. So our case challenged regulations that were passed by the City of New York. We got them struck down at the district court level. The Second Circuit Court of Appeals, which is the next level, affirmed in part, reversed in part. So there was one part they reversed on. We disagree with that part of the opinion, so we've asked the Supreme Court to take that up. We'll know within a few months whether they will. We hope that they will, because I think, again, it's one of these things where you don't have to be on our side to think that the people we represent have rights and should be protected. You don't have to agree with us about abortion to think that in a pluralistic society such as we have to respect the rights of people who dissent from the abortion regime.
Right, I think that's why on so many levels this is a civil rights issue for all of us.
Exactly
people
what it is.
In the profession, yeah.
Okay. And we will be right back with Kelsey Hazard after this short break. Please stay tuned.
Thank you. Welcome back to A Matter of Life. I'm joined here with my co-host, Carol Tobias, National Right to Life, and our next guest is Kelsey Hazard. Kelsey is the president of Secular Pro-Life, and welcome to A Matter of Life. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Can you tell us a little bit about your organization and what you're doing?
Absolutely. Secular Pro-Life is in its 6th year now. It's run by young people and mostly for young people, although we do welcome all comers. And Secular Pro-Life is exactly what it sounds like. We are a group of people who oppose abortion on entirely secular grounds. This is a human rights issue and a civil rights issue, as you've been reiterating over the past couple of interviews. The way I like to talk about it is to compare it to the way that other issues have been treated in the public discourse. For instance, there are many fantastic faith-based organizations out there that are fighting sex trafficking, and yet no one would ever dream of considering sex trafficking a religious issue. Abortion has been set aside as different and as special. That's by design. That's, if you look at the early history of the abortion movement, they sought to frame it as a religious issue, as a way to divide the country. And that strategy has continued forward to this day.
You're absolutely right. When I think of, you hear this, it's separation of religion, state and religion, and it's been so misconstrued to be a religious issue. And absolutely a human rights issue when you hold a child who's been aborted and or start in a room counting the arms and the legs and to make sure that you have it all. This is a human rights issue and very much a civil rights issue.
Absolutely.
Now, do you have members or groups around the country that you work with, or is this kind of something that you're using the social media to reach out to people
It is largely
nationwide?
based in social media, although we have, I'm very glad to say that we have friends on, in various organizations that we have been able to work alongside. But Secular Pro-Life does not have physical offices. It is very much internet-based. That really was our genesis through Facebook and that sort of thing.
But you have a very effective blog where you've got a lot of different people, contributing and writing, different topics.
That's one of our largest projects is that blog, and it gets picked up frequently on other pro-life media sites, and we do get a lot of support from pro-lifers, including Christian pro-lifers, for the work that we're doing on that blog. My goodness, just the growth that we've had over the past 6 years, for starting with just a core group of secular pro-life people and having it expand to the extent that it has in just a few short years has really been incredible.
Well, you told us right before we went on air that you love talking about polling and numbers.
Yes,
so
I do.
What do you have that you want to share?
Sure. Well, I think the reason for secular pro-life success has not been my brilliant leadership. It has been just the moment that we're at in history and the demographics of this new pro-life generation. I'm 26 myself. I'm a proud millennial. We're a great generation. I'm very humble about it.
You are the pro-life generation.
We are the pro-life
love
generation.
The banners.
And we're also the least religious generation in American history. The polling is pretty consistent about that. And when you look at, you can look at Gallup and you can look at Pew also, and compiling all these sources together, figuring out how many non-religious people there are in the United States and what percentage of them identify as pro-life, we have calculated that there are more than 6 million non-religious opponents of abortion in the United States.
I thank you for the job you're doing in diffusing this. It's not a Catholic issue. It's not a religious issue. It is. The polls are saying it is what it is.
Right. And I should clarify. We aren't at a point where we have a pro-life majority within the atheist community. That is not where we are, unfortunately. But what we are seeing is that younger people in particular are, even if they don't call themselves atheist, will say that they're unaffiliated, or the term the pollsters like to use is nuns, N-O-N-E-S, not N-U-N-S. But we're seeing a lot of these younger nuns. And a similar pattern within the political realm, that younger people aren't necessarily identifying themselves as liberal or conservative or Democrat or Republican, but more independent. And we're just seeing new frameworks. There's a real hunger for a new way of looking at things, driven by many factors, by gridlock in Congress and so on and so forth, that we really would like to see things done differently. And so you get combinations of beliefs that would have been unheard of in the 1980s. Young people who are pro-life and support same-sex marriage, for example, very common. We see that a lot in secular pro-life. So those kinds of changes, I think, are going to impact the pro-life movement in a big way. But I think it can be a positive impact as long as the generations are communicating with one another and respecting each other and understanding each other.
I think that's one of the things that really confuses the media, politicians. That
I feel like the
young
media is
people
about
are
10 years
pro-life,
behind.
but they don't fit other categories.
Right. Yeah. The media is about 10 years behind. It took them a while to figure out that we had a pro-life majority period in the United States, and now they are especially confounded by the incredible success of gay rights movement, and particularly on the marriage issue, versus incredible pro-life success, and that just boggles their minds, and they can't. I think it really is the millennial generation that's driving those patterns, and the old guard hasn't quite gotten their head around that yet.
Okay, Kelsey Hazard with Secular Pro-Life. Thank you so much for being here.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much, and I think that your audience will appreciate this, and you will bring the voice of the voiceless to a whole new audience.
That's our goal.
Yes.
That is absolutely our goal.
Yes. Thank you so much for being on the show, Kelsey.
Well, take care.
Good luck in all that you do.
Thank you.
We're going to break now for a commercial, and we thank Kelsey.
We had to get into the schools, and we had to break down the natural modesty, and we had to separate them from their parents and their values. And the easiest way to do that is sex education.
Guess what? The 27th edition of Stedman's Medical Dictionary came out, and they redefined conception.
When you teach a generation that at the very beginning of life, life is insignificant, then as they get older, they could very possibly have the mentality that no life is significant.
We've gone through an education system and we've been taught evolution, everything happens by natural processes. Well, it's just an animal anyway. You're just an animal. I'm just an animal. These people, they know that they're killing a human being, but we're just animals, and we have a right to do what we want to do, don't we? Don't we own our bodies?
Matter of Life. We are joined now by Steve Carlin with 40 Days for Life. You have done some amazing campaigns. Steve, I know I've joined you during the Lenten season. I think every year we do a 40-day campaign, and I have joined with you in prayer and fasting.
Let's start from the beginning. In case you've got someone in the audience who has not heard of 40 Days for Life, what do you do and how do you do it?
Sure. 40 Days for Life is an internationally coordinated campaign that aims to end abortion through really three simple components: prayer and fasting, community outreach, really educating the public on the crisis of abortion in our midst, and peaceful, prayerful vigil. That's kind of the hallmark of what we do. We stand and we pray peacefully in front of abortion centers all day, every day for 40 straight days. And like I said, it's internationally coordinated twice a year, once in the spring, once in the fall.
Now, do you have people that go out there every day for 40 days, or do you have people that will take like 1 day or 3 days out of that 40 days?
Right. Generally, people are signing up for an hour here, a couple of hours there. But there are some places where we have folks that are so committed and they're at a place in their life where they're able to go out all day, every day. It's really remarkable to see people with different abilities making the sacrifices that they're able to.
Right. What's been your experience when you're out there? What kind of experiences have you had?
You get everything. Sometimes you get people heckling you, sometimes you get people praising you, sometimes you stand out there and you're tempted to wonder if it's making a difference, and then other times you're out there and you see a baby saved. And so it really runs the gamut. The entire pro-life experience plays out in your midst when you're praying on the sidewalk. And so we've just been blessed to know that I think 40 Days for Life in many cases is like you might look at it as a tapestry, and if you focus in on one thread or 1 hour of prayer too closely, you might not see anything, but it's when you take a step back and you see those threads woven together or those hours of prayer woven together that you can see some of the fruits that the Lord has made out of people's willingness just to humble themselves in prayer.
Right. And I think so many, just through the internet communications that we have and the emails from Sean, join you in prayer, from their homes, from wheelchairs, from hospital beds. It's so cohesive, your organization.
Absolutely. We've been in 27 different countries now, and I like to say that many different languages, but all the common language of prayer lifting up those prayers to our Lord. And I just led a workshop full of 40 Days for Life leaders, and one of the goals that was set at that workshop is the leaders really wanted to go out to people who are not able to go out to the vigil sites, the people who are in nursing homes, the people who are perhaps cloistered religious, perhaps people who are in prison, but people of faith, and get those folks praying as sort of the engine of everything else that takes place. When we've got folks in prayer, everything else seems to fall into place. So you're absolutely right.
Right. Can you talk to us about those times that you were outside of an abortion clinic? Because I know I've gotten the emails that a baby was saved by the presence of 40 days.
There's nothing like it. I mean, it's just remarkable. And it shouldn't surprise us at the same time, because we hear the stats how of women who have abortions, somewhere in the neighborhood of 2/3 of them are pressured by another individual into that abortion, how about 80% of them don't know that there are places like pregnancy centers where they can go for help. So it shouldn't surprise us to find out that these women are looking for a way out. But so often I think there's a sense of tangible relief, like, I didn't have to go through with it. There was someone willing to help me. And that's a special thing to be a part of. And I hope that everybody that's watching today, I hope that everybody that's here marching has the opportunity to be in front of a Planned Parenthood or another abortion center when a life is saved, because that moves the entire course of history through one life.
Exactly. What do you say? What do you do when you're out there? I know you pray.
Sure. Sometimes that's all it takes. Sometimes just the mere act of praying is enough to be that sign that the woman is looking for, that she shouldn't go through with it, that God will provide for her. Other times we've got folks who are trained sidewalk counselors, and they'll be happy to say, if you thought about a second opinion, or we've got some free help we'd love to offer you. So you don't need to be an expert. I'm familiar with a case back home in Wisconsin where I'm from, where we had an 8-year-old girl praying with her family, and that 8-year-old girl's witness was enough to save a life. I always say, she wasn't a long-time sidewalk counselor or a veteran pro-life expert, but as my son would say, my little boy at home, she loves Jesus and she loves the babies, and sometimes that's all that it takes.
Right.
What kind of reaction do you get from the employees or the workers at the abortion facilities?
Sometimes when a campaign is new, I think there's a little bit more opposition. They might, scowl at you or sometimes even yell at you. But when you're there for 1 day or 2 days or 5 days, that'll happen. When you start hitting 20, 25, 30, 40 days in a campaign, they get a little bit more silent, and I think it's introspection, and I think it's a healthy introspection. Nobody else goes to work and has someone praying on their knees for them in front of their workplace. That's a sign that something is wrong, and so that's why we've seen through 40 Days for Life, 107 workers have conversions, leave the abortion industry, and begin to walk with Christ. So it's, the reactions shift over the course of those 40 days.
That is so wonderful, and to know that there's children alive because
Yes.
of 40 days.
It's been a blessing to be able to follow some of them. We were at an event in Los Angeles over the weekend, and David B. Wright, our founder and national director, was able to get up on stage with a little girl who's now 4 years old, and she's wearing a t-shirt, and she's hanging out with her mom, and what a blessing. It really destroys that myth that, pro-lifers are pro-life until the baby's born, and then where are they? Well, we're still here, and then city after city throughout the U.S. and even around the world have continued to be there for these families after the baby is born.
Right.
Now, how did you get into it?
I got involved when I was a newlywed. My wife had a coworker who had an abortion, and we had, tried to help her make a life choice, and she decided to, but she was one of those 2/3 that was pressured back into an abortion decision. And that's what got me off the couch. I recognized I couldn't just be pro-life anymore. I had to do something about it. So I got involved, led the Madison, Wisconsin campaign for a while. We were involved in a huge effort to keep the University of Wisconsin from opening up a late-term abortion facility on campus. That effort was successful. Not one abortion was performed, and just had the chance to get more and more involved. And now I'm blessed to work with the National 40 Days for Life team.
And it's almost, I don't want to say intoxicating, but when you know that you are doing something worthwhile with your time, with your life, it's not just a job.
Absolutely.
It's something that, you want to just continue on and keep fighting.
Absolutely. We see people, when you ask the question at the beginning, there are some folks who are there all day, every day, because it's what they're passionate about. And some folks are blessed to be able to do it for a living, but if they didn't have to do it for a living, they'd be doing it as a volunteer anyway. So it's the commitment is remarkable. It's absolutely inspiring and heroic.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Thank you so much. I know that your organization, I love to follow your link, your
40daysforlife.com.
40daysforlife.com. It's been inspiring, and like I said, especially during the Lenten season,
Sure.
I've joined with you in prayer, and I love getting the emails from David, you know, that a baby was saved, or a worker going into a facility, and your presence, your prayer, as you said, it has to trigger something in their mind,
Absolutely.
in their heart. You know, what am I doing? And just giving them the courage to come to terms, to look into their hearts at what they're doing.
Yeah, prayer is one thing we know is never in vain. I mean, sometimes we see the results of it very tangibly right in front of us. Other times it might not be till we get to heaven, but we know the Lord is not going to, you know, turn back the prayer of a sincere heart. So we are very enthusiastic about that.
I think too, you may not always see the fruits of your labors, because I think there are those women who will go in and proceed to have the abortion, but will have conviction because they saw you there, and will come to terms with what they've done and seek forgiveness and benefit from your prayers and your loving support outside that clinic on that day.
We like to talk about the vigil as the last sign of hope for a woman before she goes in and makes that decision, but also as the first sign of mercy after she comes out having had the abortion. We hope that it can be the place where the seeds of healing are planted.
The last sign of hope, the first sign of mercy. I love that. That's beautiful.
It is.
And I think that's what the pro-life movement is about. You know, it's about reaching out to people, first of all, with the message of life and in defense of the unborn, but, you know, our ability to stand up for the woman who is post-abortive, who's struggling. You know, our prayers, our love and support are with them as well.
I remember very clearly one day, just a beautiful story, being at the vigil site, and somebody who was hostile to our cause came out and started berating one of our volunteers. And that volunteer very calmly said, "I had my abortion in 1972. When did you have yours?" And the woman went from screaming to collapsing in tears and hugging and embracing our volunteer. Just a powerful moment.
That's beautiful. Yes, amazing. And I'm sure that all of you at 40 Days have had those aha moments of experiencing somebody else's heart, the pain of going in there, the fear that they're facing as they go into that clinic, the despair that's maybe not on the surface when they walk out, but is somewhere inside of them. And it's people like you and David Bure and the whole crew from 40 Days for Life that has extended something so beautiful. Thank you.
Now, if a woman goes into the abortion facility having gone through the people that are standing there praying, and she comes back out because she changed her mind, do many of them ever come up and say thank you, or do you just maybe see them walking away and you think they weren't in there long enough to kill their baby? So hopefully that is one that you do. I'm wondering what kind of interaction you would have with the woman after she's come out, especially if she changed her mind because you were there.
Yeah, it varies. There are some where it's something as simple as, "I couldn't go through with it, thanks for being here," offhand remark, and they go their separate ways, and they maybe say they don't need help, whatever, to relationships that have continued for years. And you see the whole gamut of experiences. So we are always most grateful when we can continue that walk with that woman, with that couple, with that family. I know we were involved in throwing a baby shower for a couple that chose life. That's not an uncommon thing to happen. It's happened all over the country.
Right.
So it's really a blessing to be able to, abortion is really a symptom of someone's network breaking down. They're choosing abortion because they don't have that infrastructure in place, the family members, the friends. And so when we can step in and help fill that void, it's such a source of relief for those who, didn't know where to turn.
The scope of your ministry is amazing, really. You've certainly reached out to so many.
Well, it's been a blessing. We're looking forward to this spring, if things go as they usually do. Sometime during March, we will be able to witness to our 10,000th saved baby that we know of. I think the numbers are much higher, but 10,000, what a beautiful round number, and we are really excited for that day.
Wow.
It's amazing.
And we can all join with 40 Days for Life in their spring campaign. And please visit their website. Their stories are so beautiful, so heart-moving, and just thank you so much for your presence here today.
My pleasure.
Being with us.
Thank you. And is it 40 Days for Life?
40daysforlife.com, and we'll kick off on Wednesday, February 18th this year.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for being
February
here.
18th.
Ash Wednesday.
Is that Ash Wednesday?
Yes,
Our
yes.
kickoff, yeah?
Yes.
Okay. Great. Thank you. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you,
being
Steve.
guests.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. And we will break now for some of our commercials, and then when we come back, we'll be live on the street. Thank you so much.
We had to get into the schools. And we had to break down natural modesty, and we had to separate them from their parents and their values. And the easiest way to do that is sex education.
That's what the 27th edition of Stedman's Medical Dictionary came out, and they redefined conception.
When you teach a generation that at the very beginning of life, life is insignificant, then as they get older, they could very possibly have the mentality that no life is significant.
We've gone through an education system and we've been taught evolution and everything happens by natural processes. Well, it's just an animal anyway. You're just an animal. I'm just an animal. These people, they know that they're killing a human being, but we're just animals. And we have a right to do what we want to do, don't we? Don't we own our bodies?
So there was word about a legislation that was going to be passed for pro-life. How do you feel about that? What is your opinion?
Well, you know, I'm very excited about the Pain-Capable Unborn Child Protection Act because of the fact that it's going to protect the most vulnerable among us, those who are in the womb. And, you know, as they say, I mean, it's really looking at the value of every single human life. And, you know, I'm reminded of what our founders said, and that was they believed that we were endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights. And it's no coincidence that the very first thing they listed was life. We can debate taxes, we can talk about the, you know, gun rights, all the issues that a lot of us are caring about. But if we don't have life, the very core of that, there's nothing we can do or say it's going to affect. So what we have to do is we have to make sure we're standing together. And it's very encouraging to me to see that House leadership, both in the Congress and Senate, are stepping up, and in this, they're making sure that their voice is heard on this very important issue.
Thank you. So do you see any new changes, or are you looking forward to any new changes in the March of Life?
Well, you know, I'm excited about the March for Life. It's always encouraging to have thousands of people join together, and this never gets enough media coverage because the encouraging part about this for me is that you have people from all over the United States. Even I noticed a group from Canada, people joining us internationally. They're coming here because they understand that when we value what God values, and that is that all human life is precious from conception to natural death, when we're willing to take a bold stand for the Lord, He will honor that. You know, fear breeds fear. But the reverse of that is true. Courage breeds courage. And we have some most courageous people from all over the United States that are here today. I'm excited to stand with them.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Is Dad here? He's not. He's not.
So I just... to you.
Welcome back to A Matter of Life. I'm joined here, I'm Marianne Lawhan, and I'm joined with my co-host, Carol Tobias from National Right to Life. Thank you so much for being part of this show as we broadcast live from the Capitol, the Right to Life March 2015. Carol, one of the things that I'm thinking of as we see this March for Life, we have our theme, Every Life is a Gift. And I think there seems to be a dual theme that we see reoccurring throughout the march and the programming today. And one is the sacredness of all life and the challenge of a woman faces when she hears a diagnosis of Down syndrome or spina bifida. And one of the speakers at the March for Life today spoke very directly about, technology has advanced so much that we can make these diagnoses in utero, and women become terrified when they hear, my baby isn't perfect,
Right.
And for most of us, it takes till the kids are about 16, and then we figure they weren't so perfect. But these children certainly face a tremendous intrauterine challenge. The death that is opted for so many of them. I know one time I had a child, and there was a significant chance for him to have anomalies, and people thought it was actually cruel that I didn't consider that option, and how would I feel if my child were to be blind or deaf? How do you address that when you're confronted with that question?
Well, it is so frustrating because in this country, we do what we can to help disabled people. We have cut holes into our sidewalks so that canes and wheelchairs and walkers can get up and down the sidewalks. Most of the buildings now have to be accessible so that they can get to an elevator, or the bathrooms, now have the wheelchair stalls in all of our bathrooms. This country supposedly really cares about disabled people and wants to take care of them. And yet when it comes to the unborn child, if that child isn't perfect, many in society would say, just kill that baby, end that baby's life. Well, we wouldn't say that about a 32-year-old man who's in an accident and is going to spend the rest of his life in a wheelchair. So we're looking at the disability as being more important or more threatening than the child, and we need to turn that around.
And the fact is, too, I think when you talk with somebody with a disability, they appreciate life. They're grateful for life. They have enthusiasm. River Song, we recently did an interview with a boy who had Down syndrome and his mom, and he touted himself as the #1 box maker at the pizzeria. We all have a niche and a purpose and a right, and a very right to life.
Yeah, we do. I was at a speaking engagement last year, and a gentleman in a wheelchair came up to me and he said, I know that National Right to Life has been fighting Obamacare. Thank you, because I'm one that's going to be denied care. And he looked at that as very threatening, that his life was in danger because of Obamacare, and he was very concerned. Right. Now, I would love to talk to you more about this, but we have been joined by Kristen Hawkins, who is the head of Students for Life of America. So, Kristen, why don't we're going to come on up.
Kristen.
Break. We're going to take a break first. I missed the clue. Sorry, okay. Kristen, we're going to bring you up after the break.
In the eye of the beholder. Are we the creation of an almighty and divine designer, or are we the product of several random chances? The world is shifting from one of absolute truth to one where truth is merely an opinion. But what are the consequences? My name is Marcus Sipek. I'm not religious, nor am I an atheist. I'm human, and I'd like to know where we came from, where we're headed, and what's in store for us in the meantime. I'm Marcus Sipek, and this is the Darwin Effect.
We had to get into the schools, and we had to break down the natural modesty, and we had to separate them from their parents and their values. And the easiest way to do that is sex education.
That's what the 27th edition of Stedman's Medical Dictionary came out, and they redefined conception.
When you teach a generation that at the very beginning of life, life is insignificant, then as they get older, they could very possibly have the mentality that no life is significant.
We've gone through an education system and we've been taught evolution, everything happens by natural processes. Well, it's just an animal anyway. You're just an animal. I'm just an animal. These people, they know that they're killing a human being, but we're just animals, and we have a right to do what we want to do, don't we? Don't we own our bodies?
Welcome back to A Matter of Life's second annual broadcasting. Joining us now is Christine Hawkins, and Kristen. I'm so sorry. It was with Students for Life. Either way, good. Welcome, Kristen, and thank you for being on the show.
Well, thanks for having me. It's great.
We know that young people are pro-life, but there are still too many in the world. Congress, the media, would deny that.
That's right.
That they really don't understand or don't believe that this is the pro-life generation. So you work with Students for Life, so...
And that's what we were out here doing today. We were showing the nation that this is the pro-life generation, handing out our signs, leading the counter protests, getting the students excited, getting them to chant. Because, this is a formative event for any young pro-lifer. I remember when I came to my first March for Life, I had just started volunteering with Right to Life and the pregnancy center that I worked for. And this was something, I always felt like I was alone in my high school. I'd started this Teens for Life group, but I didn't really know what I was doing. And I came here and I was like, wait a minute, there's all these young people. I'm not alone. So this is a big event in the life of a young person, something that they're going to remember for their entire life. So our goal, for our team is we want to give them an experience. So when they go home, they are pumped up and they say, what else can I do? Don't let this be the biggest thing you do all year for life.
That's been one of my, I shouldn't say a concern, but one thing I do want to make sure is that when people come to, either it's this March or many of them just go to their state capital for March, that they don't think I've done my pro-life work for the year.
That's right.
They need to do this 365 days a year, to make a difference in someone's life.
That's exactly right. We have our national conference, and it's always the country's largest pro-life conference. We have 2,300 kids out there tomorrow. Wow. And, I was at the mall, and I was handing out signs today, and I was seeing some of our groups, and I was like, I don't see you register for our conference. Please don't tell me you came all this way, spent all this money to say you're pro-life, but not to come to the conference to learn how to save lives and become a more effective activist. And that's what we're always saying, come to the march, but come to the conference so you can become equipped, so you can learn how to talk about these issues effectively. It's one of my biggest
And
pet
it's
peeves.
so important to channel that enthusiasm of youth and their energy and idealism.
That's right.
Tell me about some of the projects you do.
Sure. Well, we've got a national conference tomorrow, and then we're actually taking a red eye tomorrow night out to San Francisco's Walk for Life. So we will be there passing our signs, doing our normal stuff, and then we actually have our second annual West Coast conference in San Francisco. And then we'll take about a day off, and then we're back to the campuses because school's now back in session for a lot of the campuses. We've got a lot of different spring tours coming up. So, so often our field representatives are out on the campuses, they're meeting the students, they're training them. It's not really out there stuff. It's a 10 p.m. trip to Starbucks, or it's a training with 15 students in a room. But what we've been doing lately are these campus tours, where we go on campus and we raise these issues of Planned Parenthood's business model, of fetal development and human rights. And so we have a new display coming out this spring that it's going to be pretty fun. When do rights begin? And we'll actually ask the students to vote. When does human life begin? And it was interesting. We did a couple of the test studies this fall, and no one wants to put the Post-it note by birth. And the 3 people that did at one of these liberal schools, they ran away. Everyone had to kind of admit that life began at conception if they wanted to be scientifically and philosophically correct. So it was interesting. We'll also be doing a pain-capable a push on the college campus as well. And NLC has this Doctors Feel Pain site, so it's great for our med students. But we're also going to be taking it to a lot of states that have some vulnerable politicians in them.
Right.
That sounds good.
Yeah. We'll talk about that later.
No, we did hear this week that supposedly millennials aren't pro-life.
Yeah.
But there was a poll that came out yesterday that I know you're very familiar with. Give us some of the results.
Yeah, it was 58% or 59%. I might be off by one. I might be hurting myself. But 50 or 59% of millennials are morally opposed to abortion. It's a Marist poll paid for by the Knights of Columbus. And this is a really important poll for us because often in the pro-life movement, the polls will come out from Pew or Gallup and they'll ask these questions. I remember a couple years ago, Gallup did a poll and it was Roe versus Wade. And most people don't even know what Roe versus Wade, and that was the question. Do you support Roe versus Wade? Okay, you know, whatever. This was an important poll because they asked the morality question. Because we always win on that. We always tell people we're winning on that. We know it. We have 838 groups. Planned Parenthood's got 200. So we're winning on the issue. And it was really fascinating. What was really exciting to me was 52% of millennials said abortion should be illegal in cases of rape, incest, or the health of the mother. So 52% are in favor of banning abortion. And that to me is huge because a lot of times we'll lose on that legality question. And we always are focusing on that on campus. If you're morally opposed to something, how could you say it should be legal? So that to me was one of the most encouraging things I've seen in a couple of months.
It is so exciting to see that pro-life generation. I just love when they carry that banner. Oh, my heart. I just get so happy.
You know, it's funny. That's an old 1960s tactic because we came up with that slogan shortly after we founded Students for Life, so it was about 2006, and I don't remember who in my office came up with the banner and the signs. And I don't think the polls were in our favor. But we just said, we're going to do what they do. We're saying we're the majority. And it worked.
You are.
People want to join the winning side. But now we're overwhelmingly winning.
But I think that presence on our college campuses where our young people are not being, first of all, they're a generation that never knew that abortion was illegal.
Yeah.
And they're not being educated properly in what abortion does to a woman's body, what abortion does to the body of their child. And they're more influenced by a liberal media and a liberal president and liberal legislation. So a presence like yours, and just to know that there's kids that are pro-life, but if you were in a crisis pregnancy,
that's right. You know, I had ABC film crew. Everybody was looking at me today, well, who are these people? They were following us around because they joined us on campus a couple months ago, and they kept saying, "Well, they're all young and attractive and articulate. Is this everybody in the group?" And I was like, "Yeah, this is everybody in the Students for Life group. That's the pro-life movement." And they couldn't believe it. And there was a couple of girls, I think, in the group who were pregnant, and their group there at University of New Mexico, they had launched a Pregnant on Campus initiative. So they were actively out there. They're actually going to launch a pregnancy center this semester. We're so excited about that. And you know, the ABC News crew was like, "Wow, this is." You guys are helping women. I said, yeah, you know, in the pro-life movement, we care about women. Newsflash! I know, newsflash. But it was an awesome way to kind of show these people from Manhattan who have this one single-minded view of the pro-life movement that that's a whole different world. So that they're out there today because they wanted to kind of see everything that was going on and why were we. And
they had to notice all the young kids that were out there.
Yes. So I don't know how the piece will turn out because they were asking all the hard questions, and I know they have the agenda, but the footage itself should speak.
You keep up the good job, and thank you so much for being a guest on the show. Thank you so much for all that you did. We're going to go out to the rally with Rick Santorum, and when we come back, Father Peter West will be joining us live. Kristen, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Welcome back to A Matter of Life. Carol and I are joined now by the Vice President of Mission for Human Life International, Father Peter West. Father, thank you so much for being a guest on the show.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Tell us a little about Human Life International and what you do there.
Okay. Human Life International is the largest pro-life organization in the world. We have a presence in about 80 different countries, and we fight to protect life and to teach the Catholic Church's teachings on marriage and human sexuality. We fight against contraception, abortion, euthanasia, so the whole range of life issues. We defend marriage as a union between one man, one woman, united for life and open to the transmission of new human life.
And how long have you been with them?
I have been with Human Life International since September of 2011.
Okay.
Yes.
And you were just telling us that you have been on a mission around the country.
That's correct. I just finished a mission in November, which had me traveling all around the United States with an icon, a replica of the icon of Our Lady of Czestochowa. So we're asking the Blessed Virgin Mary's intercession to help us to defeat the culture of death and build a culture of life. So that took me to altogether through 47 different states.
Wow, that's
Yes.
beautiful.
Yeah, in 14 months.
And I do think our Blessed Mother appointed to us as Mother from Christ on the cross. And I often comment, you know, Christ didn't really come into the world in a manger in Bethlehem. He came into the world in the womb of his mother with those words, Hail Mary, full of grace.
That's correct.
The Lord is with you.
And Mary said, "Let it be done to me according to thy word," and the word became flesh and dwelt among us. Right? Exactly.
Right. And when I espouse to women's rights and, you know, women are strong, what strength did it take for that young girl to say, "Let it be done unto me according to thy word"?
And precisely because Pope John Paul II had such a great devotion to Our Lady of Czestochowa, and we believe that she was instrumental in bringing down atheistic communism in Eastern Europe. That's why we turn to her now, and we ask her intercession to help us to overcome the culture of death here in the United States and throughout the world.
And throughout the world.
Because our mission is not only here in the United States, it is international, but what happens here in the United States really affects the rest of the world. So that's why it's so important that we march for life here.
Right,
today.
I think we set a precedence with Roe versus Wade.
Exactly.
That's been
Yes.
dominoed.
I'd like to switch tracks just a little bit. Today, because it's the anniversary of Roe v. Wade, everyone is focused on abortion. But I know Human Life International has also been very effective in some of their euthanasia educational outreach projects. Can you tell us anything about what you're doing in that area and how you might be making a difference in preventing the death of innocent, vulnerable people just because someone else has decided they're useless?
Yes, well, we are an educational organization, so we believe in the sanctity of all human life from the moment of conception to the moment of natural death. So we do speak out on a whole range of issues, and I myself was personally involved with the Terri Schiavo case, and speaking out for her right to life, which unfortunately we were not able to save her life. But it's so important, and right now in my own home state of New Jersey, they are trying to legalize physician-assisted suicide. So it's very important that we do speak out, and Human Life International does. We're teaching about these issues. We have talking points that are available online to help on that. We help people toward the living will. Which is the will to live, really.
The will to live. Yes, yes. A pro-life version of the living will.
Right,
yes.
Exactly. So it's the will to live, which presumes that you do want to live. Of course, the Catholic Church's teaching is that we do not necessarily have to use extraordinary means of preserving life, but feeding must be provided as one progresses toward a natural death. And I just recently had, in my own life, my own family, I had a cousin who recently died and spent some time in hospice, and what was fed until he died a natural death. So
the sanctity of life and the preciousness of human life needs to go from the unborn child as well as those who would be, who are disabled or vulnerable, medical care, food and water being taken away from them.
Right, yes.
We do need to be concerned about all human life.
Absolutely, yeah. We make sure that they get the proper comfort care and make sure that the bedding is changed and make sure that they're...
And I'm glad you introduced the concept of hospice care.
Yes.
Because that is so important too.
But one does have to be careful though, with the type of hospice that you enter, because some of these hospices are run by death and dying groups, and they will not respect the wishes, and they will not even sometimes provide an IV toward someone with someone who has a terminal illness. And if you withdraw someone's food and water, you're introducing a new cause of death there. That's correct. Yeah, you're not letting someone die a natural death. They're dying of a cause that you've introduced, starvation and dehydration, which is really what happened to Terri Schiavo. She was dehydrated to death.
And do you speak to how do you address like the Down syndrome, the spina bifida, those intrauterine diagnoses that women receive sometimes?
Yeah.
How does Human Life International speak to those issues?
Well, basically we teach that, as the church teaches, that every life is precious. Pope John Paul II said every human being is unique, precious, and unrepeatable. You know, I remember one time I went to an Indian reservation in South Dakota, the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation, very very poor place, and there was a man there who was obviously mentally handicapped. He came up to me and he was hugging me, and he was hugging everybody. But the Lakota, the people, they told me that they believe that the people who are like this, that they had a higher gift. But that fits in very well with what St. Paul said, that the greatest gift is love.
Right.
Isn't it? And people with Down syndrome are often the most loving people that you would ever want to meet. And it's such a shame that in our society today, that 90% of children who are diagnosed with Down syndrome are aborted. So they never have a chance at life.
Has Obamacare affected your ministry at all?
Well, I mean, in terms of our particular situation, not really, because we don't have a large number of employees in Virginia. But certainly it has led to a degrading of the value for life, and it's just so terrible that, you know, the president could get away with saying that he was not going to fund abortion, that no money was going to be used to support abortion, but then he takes the Little Sisters of the Poor to court to try to force them to pay for abortifacients. It's so hypocritical, and our media just lets them get away with it.
Yeah. Those Little Sisters of the Poor, they are just so amazing, and how they have set an example for this country, that humble group of sisters.
Yeah.
They've just been amazing and so strong, and I hope they know that the country is behind them.
Yes.
Yeah, they are.
How did you get involved in this, Father?
Well, I worked for a good amount of time for Priests for Life before I got involved with Human Life International, and I was approached by Human Life International, but it was found it very very interesting because I saw that the attack on life is not only in the United States, but it's global. And I wanted to be involved in fighting the international culture of death.
Wow.
You know, Planned Parenthood and Marie Stopes, and they have long tentacles. And unfortunately, our government is so involved in funding abortion overseas and through the United States Aid for International Development, and then of course the UN and International Planned Parenthood Federation, Marie Stopes International. So I wanted to get involved. I thought it would be a great challenge to get involved in internationally. And I have done some international travels with HLI. I've gone to Costa Rica, in Poland in preparation for my visit with the icon to all these different places. In the United States, but which was a very beautiful trip, and they're fighting their own battles there. They won the battle against atheistic communism, but now they're fighting Western secularism, and that could be even worse in a certain sense. Yes.
Well, we thank you so much.
Well, thank you very
for being
much
with us this afternoon.
Okay, I appreciate it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Carol.
much.
Thank you,
and
Marianne.
Keep up the great job, and the work
thank
you
you
do
so much.
is just amazing, and the scope of your ministry is so broad, and thank you.
Thank you. God bless you.
And stay tuned. We will be right back after the break.
And we had to break down the natural modesty, and we had to separate them from their parents and their values. And the easiest way to do that is sex education.
Guess what? The 27th edition of Stedman's Medical Dictionary came out, and they redefined conception.
When you teach a generation that at the very beginning of life, life is insignificant, then as they get older, they could very possibly have the mentality that no life is significant.
We've gone through an education system and we've been taught evolution, everything happens by natural processes. Well, it's just an animal anyway. You're just an animal. I'm just an animal. These people, they know that they're killing a human being, but we're just animals. And we have a right to do what we want to do, don't we? Don't we own our bodies?
Welcome back to A Matter of Life. We're going to go out to the March for Life with Rick Santorum, but stay tuned after the break. Adolfo Castaneda from Human Life International will join us on this presentation.
Hi, I'm here with Senator Santorum. How are you?
Good, thank you.
So what are your goals here today? What is your hope to get out of this new year, 2015 March for Life?
Well, just continue to speak the truth about the importance of the dignity of all human life, and that every life matters, and that we need to stand for the truth that our founders believed in, that we are going to protect and give the right to life back to everybody.
That's absolutely, definitely important, and I'm sure everyone out there just wants to thank you for your words and your support out here today.
Thank you so much. Thanks for being here.
No problem.
We are here at A Matter of Life, and we are pleased to introduce our next guest, Adolfo Castaneda, who does Hispanic outreach for Human Life International. So welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
Glad to have you.
You were just telling us that you have been with HLI for almost 22 years, and you do the Hispanic outreach. Talk to us about your outreach and what you do, where you go, because I'm sure you do more than just the United States.
Sure. I've been traveling all over Latin America for this past 20 years. Lately, I've been working more of the office in Miami that we have, because we have another person on site dealing with the traveling in the region. And we work with Hispanics, obviously in Latin America and Spain, but also United States. There are 50 million Hispanics in the United States, and we are 16% of the population in this country, and yet 25% of all abortions yearly in the United States happen on Hispanic women. And we think that's because organizations like Planned Parenthood has 80% of their so-called clinics placed strategically in minority neighborhoods. So we're being targeted by them because of their mentality is eugenic. So we have to have that in consideration. Our work is mainly out of the Miami office, is mainly educational. We sort of feed educationally our affiliates. We have a network of affiliates in Latin America, and Mr. Mario Rojas, who is our Director of Coordination for the on-site work in Latin America. Presently, the main educational tool that we have is we record the training course. We have 2 training courses, one for Hispanics in the United States and one for Hispanics outside the United States. And the idea of the course is to try to train new pro-lifers in a relatively short time, according to our circumstances, on the main issues of the pro-life battle, including the teaching of the Catholic Church on the issues, what's going on, the arguments, how to respond to them, so that in a relatively short time, a person that is new to the movement or even a veteran in the movement can get the knowledge of the issues in a relatively short time, and thereby be more effective in the work of fighting for life.
Now, I know and have some dear friends in the Hispanic community. They are very pro-life, very pro-family. It's not uncommon to see 3 or 4 generations. If they're not living together, they're at least very close by. I have been to birthday parties where the great aunt knows the name of the littlest child, and the first thing they do when the kids come in the door is walk up to the elderly family members to greet them, to hug them. The family unit is so close, and it's amazing. I love to see it. But that's what kind of then throws me off as to you had mentioned the statistics of how many abortions are performed on Hispanic women compared to the overall population.
Right.
So are they being pushed into it? Is it just...
I think there are 2 factors. One is the fact they're being targeted. And the second one is when Hispanics come to the United States, they're in a vulnerable situation, financially and socially. And they are open to receive social services. But unfortunately, as we know, many of those services come tied into anti-life things, not only abortion, but contraception or their own type of sex education, moral sex education. So they get lured into this mentality that abortion is a solution for their problems, or contraception is a solution for the problems. And we know that the contraception practice has a repercussion in the person and the mentality, and it gives way to the anti-life mentality, anti-baby mentality. So that's why they fall into this. I believe personally that the sex education plays a big part, because it destroys the innocence. It changes the outlook on human sexuality of these kids and teens, from a traditional, natural, correct way of view human sexuality to a liberal, individualistic, selfish way, and that's the root of the abortion anti-culture.
Yes, it is.
So,
do you deal directly with the women in the abortion, or are you working more within maybe churches? Kind of what is your focus?
Sure,
Where do you
we
spend
see
your time?
ourselves in Vida Humana Internacional, the Hispanic division of Humana International, as a resource center, both in terms of educational materials and humanly speaking. And we see ourselves as at the service of the pro-life community. So we try to reach those who actually are on the front lines, who reach the vast majority of people. Yes, we do get calls in our office, pregnant women or women suffering from post-abortion syndrome, or other people that are confused. Perhaps a parent has a child that is turning into the gay lifestyle, things like that. So what we do is we refer them to the Respect Life offices, to other crisis pregnancy centers. But our main work is with the leaders, whether of big organizations or small groups, and their followers, through their courses, through our website, through the radio program, through our materials, so that can in turn educate the people they're in direct contact with. So it's kind of, yes, indirect and sometimes also direct. In our travels, of course, we're participating in conferences whether in the United States or in Latin America, and we give talks and show our materials and give interviews. But our main work, the day-to-day work, is reaching those who in turn will reach the general population.
Okay.
Wonderful. Yeah.
Very interesting. Are you in the schools at all, or do you have a presence in the schools? With
Right
this
now in
message?
Miami, we don't. But we are in contact with those that could have a presence in the schools or in the parishes, and we're open to go there to give them talks. But most of the time, is those people that we train that are in a position to go to schools or go to parish groups or parishes as a whole, or to other types of groups that they can address. We have a radio program in Spanish through EWTN, Radio Católica Mundial, World Catholic Radio, on Tuesdays live from 4 to 5 Eastern Time, that reaches all over the world and reaches Hispanics all over the world, here in the United States and abroad. And we also have newsletters. We have a website, vidahumana.org, vidahumana.org in Spanish, and we have a lot of resources there. We also publish dossiers, like 4 or 5 times a month. That is to say, a group of articles on the same topic, different aspects, whether abortion or euthanasia or chastity or cultural life, cultural death. And we follow HLI's main thrust, which is to create an effective opposition to the culture of death and thereby rebuild the culture of life. And by creating effective opposition to the culture of death is to actually fight the ideology of the pro-death organizations, to confront them, to confront their ideology, to expose them, who they are, their arguments, where they are, what are their tactics and strategies, and to debunk them. For example, the overpopulation myth, the safe and legal abortion myth, all those kinds of things, and thereby, because these organizations are the one penetrating the poor countries or the countries in Latin America with this ideology, and they do it very cleverly. So we have to unmask them and present to the people the real situation and the real alternatives to their problems.
Now, you have been with HLI for almost 22 years. What has changed since you started?
Well, we have seen that now the pro-homosexual movement is stronger than ever. We have seen now that we need to make more attention to the family as rooted in marriage between one man and one woman. Even though abortion, contraception, and sex education and euthanasia are most important topics, nevertheless, we, on the occasion of dealing with those issues, we trace them back to their roots in the lack of respect for marriage, lack of respect for the institution of the family, because the family is a sanctuary of life. So that I think is, if not changed, gotten worse from what we had at the beginning. Also, another thing on the positive side is the social media aspect. And now we need to use more social media than before. Before we didn't have that. We had internet, but that it wasn't that widespread. Right. And Twitter and Facebook and. Do you have a Twitter account? We do have a Twitter account at Vida Humana INTL International. So we of course have a website, and we're trying to go more the video way, because people are more nowadays, especially the young generation, more open to images. So we're trying to use more videos with PowerPoint presentations, things like that, to reach out to the incoming generation. So a lot has changed by way of technology, and of course also sadly by way of the culture of death.
It has, unfortunately. Well, we are speaking with Adolfo Castañeda of the Human Life International, who works in their Hispanic outreach. We appreciate very much you coming on to the show.
Okay, we're very grateful that we invited me to come, and so more people know about Vida Humana Internacional. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for being guest on the show.
Thank you.
Okay. Hi, I'm with Marie Miller, who just sang her heart out on stage. Marie, could you tell us a little bit of how you feel about pro-life?
I feel very, very strongly about being pro-life. I think that it's amazing to see so many young people out here today, because I think we're seeing that the tides are changing and that this is the pro-life generation. So I'm very, very excited to be a part of it.
Definitely. And you being a young person yourself, you can kind of relate to the crowd, and the songs that you sing, it's like a message in it, just like gather together and then support one another.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's so cool. It's so cool to have people like you too. They're doing media that are getting the message out. It's awesome.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too.
We were just out at the rally site with Marie Miller, and now we're back to the studio with Father Pavone, one of the most prominent pro-life leaders in the world. He joins us now on A Matter of Life. Oh, Father Pavone.
It is great to be with you
I'm
both.
so
Absolutely.
glad to have
What
you
a
with me again.
What a day to be together.
What
Whole
a
Life
day
Super
to
Bowl.
be together. The enthusiasm
It
out
was.
there at that march.
It was awesome. Just
yeah.
awesome.
And I heard the numbers were spectacular. The speakers were fantastic.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're mourning 57 million deaths over 42 years, but today was a celebration of life.
I always think about the march as it's a strange mixture of joy and sorrow.
Yes.
And Christians are capable of that. Christians can have joyful sorrow because we mourn and we grieve because we know the reality of abortion. Not only the death of the babies, but the pain to the mom, the dad, the whole family, the whole society. We know that pain because we face it in the eye. We're not afraid to face it for what it is. And at the same time, we know the full picture that Christ has conquered death. We know the full picture that this evil will not stand. It won't remain. There will be a day that the unborn will be protected. I believe we're going to see that day. And so we come together both in mourning and in an anticipation of victory. Right. We know we're and it's appropriate because you think about it, it's a march. We call this a march because it is a march. We call the pro-life movement a movement because we're moving. We are moving towards the goal of victory, and we know we're going to get there. The only thing we don't know is the timing, but we know we're going to get there.
Right. Priests for Life has had an incredible year with ups and downs, I know, and legislative issues. And
I'll tell you what. Today actually was a great day for Priests for Life specifically. I'll tell you why. As you know, one of the biggest things that we do all year and that we do at the March for Life each year is the Silent No More campaign.
Right.
Janet Morana, our associate director, together with Georgette Forney, the president of Anglicans for Life, founded this over 10 years ago. And all those years at the March for Life, first of all, during the rally, Silent No More women are up there at a certain point and they share their testimony. And then at the end of the march, when the march reaches the Supreme Court, we have a gathering and one after another share their testimony. Okay, people can see these testimonies at silentnomore.com. What we did today, for the first time, we implemented a vision that we have had for some years now. We know that abortion hurts everybody. It kills the baby. We've known for a long time the harm it does to the mom. In recent years, more awareness has come about of the harm it does to the dad. But now think about, what about the siblings who survive? What about the parents of the person who had an abortion? What about the friends who took them there to the abortion facility? What about the abortionists and their staff? What about the pro-lifers who tried to save that baby, failed, and now they're hurt and they're mourning and they're grieving? Today, we had at the gathering what we call the shockwaves initiative. Abortion creates all these shockwaves, hurts all these different people. And today we had evidence of that. We had a former abortionist. So together with the woman holding the sign saying, "I regret my abortion," the man, "I regret lost fatherhood," we had an abortionist there saying, "I regret performing abortions." We had some clinic workers there with signs, "I regret providing abortions." We had siblings standing up there with their moms saying, "I mourn my aborted sibling."
Really?
Imagine the power. All of them being together. My goodness. People were just moved to tears. And what this is going to do, first of all, it helps everyone heal. Because when you're standing there saying, "I had an abortion, and that doctor mistreated me, and he killed my baby," well, that makes you feel angry at the abortionist. It makes everybody feel like, what's the matter with that man? When is that man going to come to repent? And then today they look and they see, well, there he is repenting. There's the former abortionist. And so when each of them gives testimony, it facilitates the healing of all this.
It facilitates the healing of a soul and the healing of a society.
Of a society and of a family.
And of a family.
Yes.
Yeah, our churches, our schools, there should be somebody in that pew alongside of us, or somebody in the seat in front of me in school, and the effects that it's had.
Well, you know, we operate Rachel's Vineyard. Now, that's the healing component. They go to Rachel's Vineyard, they get healing, they come to Silent Lamore to share their healing. And
for those who don't know, Rachel's Vineyard is for post-abortive women.
For post-abortive women, and even the dads come too. And what happens here is that you know, as a mom who's had an abortion goes through her healing, one of the things that happens is she realizes that one or another problem she has in her life that she knows she has was connected to the abortion. And when she realizes that connection, it doesn't make the problem go away, but it gives her more strength to deal with it. Okay. Now, if we're talking about the shockwaves of abortion, we can begin to come to a point where people realize that a lot of the societal problems are based in abortion. And maybe it's time now that we get a better handle on societal problems, poverty and violence and all kinds of things, when we begin to explore the link of those problems to abortion.
Right.
And that's one of the things we hope to accomplish with this project. And again, the other thing about it is proclaiming the mercy and healing of God. We know that our current Pope, Pope Francis, is very strong on emphasizing God's mercy. He wants to reach out to those on the peripheries of the church. And we are privileged to work in a lot of ways with the Vatican. But today, when we had this gathering of healing the shockwaves of abortion, you know who started off with the opening prayer and the blessing? The Pope's representative in the United States, the Papal Nuncio Archbishop Vigano. He was there, and he brought the blessing and greeting of Pope Francis, because really, in many ways, we can say this is the Pope of mercy. You know, and of course, John Paul was focused on divine mercy as well, but Pope Francis' special love for this healing, for the Rachel's Vineyard, and
he has just such a human component to him, and. Yeah, you're just so proud to say that's our Pope. You know, he is so representative of Christ, the simplicity, the gentleness.
Wanting to be
Christ.
with the people.
Christ
among his people, yes.
Yeah, I'm just loving our Pope. Yeah. Talk to us about Obamacare and healthcare reform and
You were instrumental in a lawsuit that
it's still going on.
So talk about
we know when part of this healthcare law is that it empowered the Health and Human Services, the HHS department, to include various kinds of, quote, services that would have to be included in insurance plans. So we were told in 2011 and going into 2012, we were told, in your insurance, we employ about 50 people, you have to provide coverage for abortion in the form of the abortion-inducing drugs and other things that are morally objectionable as well. So we said, no, we're not going to do that. We teach that these are things people should not do, and we're not going to turn around and offer health care coverage for it. So we said, no. Well, at that point, the only thing you can do is sue. So we introduced a federal lawsuit in February of 2012. It was one of the first of what have now become many lawsuits against this mandate. So far, I mean, our lawsuit has been progressing up through the courts. We were ruled against at the district court level. We got an injunction, so we were protected from the mandate. We had our oral arguments, and then we had a decision at the Court of Appeals, the Washington, D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals. They ruled against us. So now we are appealing to the full Court of Appeals, an en banc hearing, as they say. So we've made that petition. The government has responded. Now we're waiting for the court to tell us whether and when they will hear this again. If they rule against us, to the Supreme Court we go. And even if the Supreme Court ruled against us, guess what? We're not going to obey the mandate. We're not going to violate our faith in order to satisfy anybody. Now, what they're trying to say to us is, oh, but we're giving you an accommodation. The only problem is the way they've set up the accommodation actually makes us still cooperators in the government's plan to expand abortion.
But you're just signing a simple piece of paper, aren't you?
See, and that's what they're saying to us. And it's the signing of that paper then that connects the insurance provider, who's still going to cover these things, directly with the employee. What we're saying is, don't involve us in that connection. If you're so determined to give our employees coverage for killing little babies, keep us out of it. You know how to find them without us. And that's what it boils down to. And you know, like you say, it seems like a little thing, signing a piece of paper. And what I've pointed out to people is, you know, in the Bible we have stories about how when the Greek rulers tried to get the Jewish people to violate their faith, they would say things like, oh, you're just eating a little piece of meat, eat the pork, you know, it's no big deal, you eat it now and you'll be... or the early Christians, oh, just put a little piece of incense on the fire and say Caesar is Lord, and you know, it takes 2 seconds. That's not a big imposition. Well, it's not a big imposition if you think about the human action of putting the incense, but it's a big betrayal, isn't it, of one's faith. So we're going to stand firm with this, and we know that people are supportive of us. In fact, Carol, you were at our rally.
I was.
In front of that Court of Appeal. We were grateful for your presence, the support of National Right to Life, and many of our colleagues in the national leadership were there, along with our friends in the Senate. Senator Ted Cruz was there, Congressman Chris Smith, Trent Franks, many of the others. So you know what? To have that kind of encouragement and support, that's what gets us all through this. You know, and National Right to Life is having battles, and we'll stand with them. You know, and it's the unity of the movement that is so refreshing. And that comes particularly to light on a day like today.
It does.
Right?
It does. When
Yeah,
you
to
see
see
all
a
the
whole
different
country.
groups, I love seeing all the young people, but they're coming from different groups, different schools, different states.
And different approaches, you know?
Unity has, is the voice that is shaking, I think, the foundation of this country.
That's right. To stay in unity, to stay in communication. I mean, National Right to Life, you know, we work together with you on all sorts of legislative things, and yet we know there are groups that take different approaches to certain legislation. And yet, you know, if we try to learn from each other and come together and, you know, support each other, this is how we'll get to the victory.
And I'm glad to see the church going forward into the political arena to this extent. You know, we hear the separation of church and state, and we hear people constantly say, you know, I am pro-life, but I want to leave politics out of it.
You know what?
Impossible.
You can't.
I preached this morning at the interdenominational prayer service that we have every year on the day of the March for Life. By the way, I want to invite people to plan to come to that, you know, when they come down for the march. It's a beautiful experience of Christian unity. And that's one of the things I said this morning, is that we have to step up to the plate as a church to talk about the politics of this. Not that the church has to become a political party or endorse a candidate even, but to simply say things like, hey folks, we've got to vote for public servants who can tell the difference between serving the public and killing the public. I mean, that's the fundamental requirement of being in public office, that you know how to protect your people. And some of them say, oh, we have to represent all the people, and they're thinking about the, you know, the pro-abortion constituents, and we have to represent all the people. And I say, no, that's what we're trying to say to you. You represent all the people. That starts with protecting all the people. You've got to represent the unborn too. Don't think you can throw them out the window.
Yeah, and represent God's truth.
Yes, exactly, exactly. Instead of thinking you can make it up on your own.
Right. You have been the voice of the voiceless and the heart of God to so many people in your ministry, Father Pavone, and the nation just follows Priests for Life. I mean, whatever religious denomination, because what you're doing is bringing us back to what this country was founded on. There were a basic 10 commandments, and the laws of this country emulated those 10. It was a spin-off of those. And now, since Roe versus Wade, that was the first device. I could actually picture myself in my Volkswagen Bug with the flowers on it, you know, and I heard abortion is legal in the United States. And I was like, wow, I've been advocating for peace. You know, it didn't sound like a peaceful thing to do to me. I didn't realize that I was to become active in this movement until I held the body of a child dying after his abortion.
Wow.
I baptized him, I named him John, and I realized we have an obligation. It was Martin Luther King that once said there's two kinds of peace. There's a negative peace, which is the absence of tension, and there's a positive peace that is the presence of justice.
That's right.
And we don't have the right to be sitting, twiddling our thumbs while 57 million babies have died.
Because if we do try to do that, things might seem to be peaceful. Oh, no one's getting upset about abortion, no one's arguing about it, no one's fussing, but that's a false peace. Because peace is lost when justice is lost, not when people start shouting or shooting or all those things. No, you lose peace when you violate human rights. And so when our country allowed the violation of the right to life, we actually, in fact, St. John Paul II wrote this in the Gospel of Life. He said the state changes its nature at that point. It's not just that it's a bad law. The state becomes something different than what it's meant to be. It becomes a tyrant state. He used those words, a tyrant state, because instead of being the place where everyone can find a common welcome and an equal protection, which is what it should be, it's a place now where the strong oppress the weak, and the weak have no recourse. That's a tyranny, he said, and when that happens, he said, the disintegration of the state itself has begun.
And we've seen that. We have seen
that. Right? St. John Paul II, which, by the way, one of the things I did during these last days, I spoke at a number of venues surrounding the March for Life. I brought a relic of John Paul II, a first-class relic of his blood. And this was given to us by Cardinal Jewish, who was his personal secretary throughout his pontificate. And the blood, he said, is a sign, blood is always a sign of life. And he said, so let this blood of John Paul remind us that we are called even to give our lives for our youngest brothers and sisters. To end abortion, it's going to require that kind of a commitment. And so that special relic is something that I am allowed to bring to national pro-life events to help people to know that, first of all, we're coming up on the 20th anniversary of his document, The Gospel of Life. So that's a very important moment to look at that document again. Evangelium Vitae, yes. And he has left us such great teachings on all of this.
That was
all these things we've been talking about. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I thank you so much for the work you have done on behalf of the unborn children,
yes,
but on behalf of this nation, on behalf of religious freedom, our right to practice our religion every day and not make it a Sunday thing.
That's right.
Sunday
not just church on Sunday, but work on Monday too. Yeah.
Yeah, to bring it into our workplace and to live the pro-life message.
That's right.
Thank you so much for your work.
Thank you for this
both. Interview. You're just amazing.
My pleasure.
We're going to have a short break. We'll be back after the break with Dr. Alveda King from Silent No More.
Had to get into the schools. And we had to break down the natural modesty, and we had to separate them from their parents and their values. And the easiest way to do that is sex education.
Guess what? The 27th edition of Stedman's Medical Dictionary came out, and they redefined conception.
When you teach a generation that at the very beginning of life, life is insignificant, then as they get older, they could very possibly have the mentality that no life is significant.
We've gone through an education system and we've been taught evolution, everything happens by natural processes. Well, it's just an animal anyway. You're just an animal. I'm just an animal. These people, they know that they're killing a human being, but we're just animals. And we have a right to do what we want to do, don't we? Don't we own our bodies?
Welcome back to A Matter of Life. Thank you all for joining us today at the 2015 March for Life. Dr. Alveda King is unable to be with us, so right now we're going to go to the founder and president of Stand True Ministries, affiliated with Priests for Life. Brian Kemper joins us now. Brian, thank you so much for being guest on the show. And if you could tell us all about your ministry and what
Absolutely.
you do. And
thank you for having me. What an honor.
Thank
It's it's been a great day so far. I mean,
It
an
has.
honest day. I got up to run the March for Life 5K with the Life Runners.
Oh, did you?
And then was hanging out with Carol backstage
Yep.
at the March for Life and marching, and it's just been I'm just blessed today. I just got to say that God is good, and I'm happy. I really,
great to hear that.
my first time coming to the March for Life was 21 years ago, and it was about 30% youth. And if you look today, it's like 70% youth, and that's
It
what
is.
I'm excited, because that's what I do. I've been pushing for youth pro-life outreach for over 20 years. I started back when after I became a Christian. I'm an old punk rock, satanic drug addict that Christ hit over the head.
Really?
In 1987, I almost died at a Grateful Dead Bob Dylan concert, and the doctor in the hospital shared the hope of Christ with me and changed my life, and came off the streets. And I was into the music, so I started calling bands that I knew as I met these Christian bands and said, let's do a concert for pro-life. And we called it Rock for Life. MTV did a big story about it, and back then this touring secular music festival called Lollapalooza called me up and said, hey, why don't you bring your pro-life booth on tour with us? Right in the middle of Planned Parenthood, Rock for Choice, legalized plot, gay marriage, all the liberals, was me doing a pro-life booth. And I got to tour, and that was the start of my passion, was just to reach young people. I was really into art and music, and I wanted to give young people a pro-life movement that they can take ownership of. Something they could, they go, I can relate to that. So I started Rock for Life, and you know, a lot of the pro-life t-shirts out there were kind of cheesy. So I started designing pro-life t-shirts, and my whole thing was to educate, activate, and equip this generation to be the generation that abolishes abortion. And that's the goal of Stand True, is to do that, and to really give them stuff that they can take ownership of.
Do you see the kids being, I don't want to say monolithic, but I think we probably have a tendency to think young kids are probably, intelligent, nice, church-going kids. At least those are the ones that we would see in the pro-life movement. I would guess you reach out to a lot of others who really don't fit that stereotype.
You know, the very first time I brought my crowd to the March for Life, and I would start to bring lots of them, like mohawks and long hair and blue hair, green hair, and all that. And Nellie Gray came up to me, and it was so funny because Nellie knew who I was. Jerry Horn had introduced me, and Nellie goes, Brian, I can handle the hair, but can you please not paint your fingernails? And it was so fun. I said, for you, Nellie, I promise I'll never wear fingernail polish to the March for Life. But yeah, we have a different group of people. When I first started going to the abortion mill to pray, they would think I was one of the pro-abortion escorts or something. They did not believe that someone that looked like me was pro-life, but I am, and there's so many of us out there. And I think as the years came by with the internet and social media, a lot of these kids are starting to feel, oh, he's pro-life, oh, he's pro-life. And then I got invited on a TV show. I did 5 episodes of Politically Incorrect with Bill Maher, and I started getting in contact. The lead singer of Van Halen called me and donated $10,000 to Rock for Life because he loved what we were doing with pro-life. And then Van Halen kicked him out.
Wow.
Gary Sharon. He got kicked out because he went on the O'Reilly Factor for us. And so there's a lot of those people out there. It's a misconception that it's just that little niche that's pro-life. It's such a misconception. I can tell you, this generation is pro-life, and it's awesome to see.
They're exciting. They're
Oh, they
passionate.
are.
And they're fearless.
And they're
Oh,
fearless.
absolutely. They'll wear the pro-life t-shirt anywhere.
I saw the one that they have, Let God Plan Parenthood.
That's I designed that.
No way.
That's my t-shirt. I designed that, yes.
I love it. I saw it this morning and I was like, I like it.
I'll have to
First
send-
I was
I'll send
seeing
you
Planned
one.
Parenthood and I thought it was maybe some of the opposition people. And then I'm looking at it, Let God Plan Parenthood.
It's one of our best-selling
I like that.
t-shirts.
I love it. I said I wanted to get that. I told the girl
I will
who was
make
hiring
sure
me.
He's gonna send you one.
Can I
You
have
get
the
a free
shirt
one.
off your back?
We have the I Am the Generation That Will Abolish Abortion t-shirt.
Yeah.
I wore that on an airplane, and I got sat next to Senator Kirk, the Republican in name only, who took over Obama's
Right.
seat.
Yeah.
And somebody came up to me and started a conversation with me, and he was listening. The whole plane starts listening, and then he turned to me, and I had a 2-hour conversation where I just drilled the gospel and talked to Senator Kirk about, I said, you say that you stand up against human trafficking. Well, here is another human rights violation. And the shirt has given me so many, actually, and I'm not endorsing it, but the shirt and the tattoos have given me more witnessing opportunities than anything. I stand in line.
Listening to that tattoo part. They
No,
can get the shirt.
I know. I know.
No, I'm
but
kidding.
for me, like I have
Yeah,
pro-life
I'm
tattooed on my
sure.
arm. And so if you're standing behind me in line, you're reading pro-life.
Okay.
And it starts conversations. People always
Sure.
go, so really, are you pro-life? Our shirt got blurred out on the Duggars a couple months ago, and it turned into a media buzz everywhere. So I love using these kind of things that people may not think of. It's not just a T-shirt. It's really a witness.
Right.
And it's great for the kids. They love wearing them.
Your
great talking
organization is national?
International.
International.
Yeah. I've spoken I was the keynote speaker at the March for Life Australia a couple years ago, where I got beat up by the socialists. We got attacked there. The police just stood back and let them beat us up. It was pretty insane, but we got the message out. I've spoken at March for Life Berlin, Belgium. I've traveled to 29 different countries doing this. So God is good. He's given. I mean, because obviously you do pro-life nonprofit work, you're not making a lot of money.
Right.
But I've had such a beautiful opportunity to go visit so many countries and see young pro-lifers in other countries that are starting. Like when I first started 20 years ago, and all of a sudden we start seeing these pockets of pro-lifers. We're starting to see that in other countries. It's like this thing that's growing. So I'm like super excited to see what God does with it there.
That's wonderful. Yeah. What was your feeling at the March for Life today? I heard the numbers were. I haven't gotten any reports on it, but I hear we.
Well, it took me about a half hour to get Jeannie Monahan from the stage through the crowd to the front of the march because there were so many people. I love the March for Life for so many reasons. It obviously inspires, it re-energizes those of us. It gives people so many chances to meet, because all the pro-life leaders, they just walk around. They walk around and hang out with the kids and they do that. But my favorite thing about the March for Life, honest to God, is standing there going, one day I will stand here celebrating the end of this.
I know.
And knowing that will happen. And knowing that my God is bigger than Roe versus Wade.
Yep.
And it will end.
A couple of years ago, Nancy Keenan, who at the time was president of NARAL, said that she got off the train at Union Station when the marchers were coming down the street. And she told a reporter that she said, oh my gosh, there are so many of them, and they're so young.
Yes.
So the other side is recognizing the passion and the intensity of the younger generations, and this march is a great way for them to show America that
at the end of the march today, you had 25 pro-abortion activists. They were just painted in blood and all that stuff. They blocked the march. They stopped it for over a half hour, and they started chanting how this generation is pro-choice. 25 of them. Well, me and Kristen Hawkins were up front, Students for Life of America, and so were thousands of pro-life students who surrounded him, and all of a sudden here's thousands of students going, we are the pro-life generation, and it just drowned them out. Wow. So it was pretty obvious who's more pro-life.
But at some point you'll see a newspaper with the two pictures making it look like they were same.
Dozens of pro-lifers marched on Washington, yes.
Yeah, okay. Well, thank you so much for being a guest on the show today. The work you do is phenomenal. I am just so honored that you came on the show. After a short break, we have Alex Schedenberg of Euthanasia Prevention Coalition joining us. So thank you all.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you so much.
And I'll get you that T-shirt.
I want the T-shirt.
What size?
Well, petite, small, of course.
Of course. Well, I thought you might want extra small.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
We had to get into the schools, and we had to break down the natural modesty, and we had to separate them from their parents and their values. And the easiest way to do that is sex education.
The 27th edition of Stedman's Medical Dictionary came out, and they redefined conception.
When you teach a generation that at the very beginning of life, life is insignificant, then as they get older, they could very possibly have the mentality that no life is significant.
We've gone through an education system and we've been taught evolution, everything happens by natural processes. Well, it's just an animal anyway. You're just an animal. I'm just an animal. These people, they know that they're killing a human being, but we're just animals. And we have a right to do what we want to do, don't we? Don't we own our bodies?
We had to get into the schools, and we had to break down the natural modesty, and we had to separate them from their parents and their values. And the easiest way to do that is sex education.
That's why the 27th edition of Stedman's Medical Dictionary came out, and they redefined conception.
When you teach a generation that at the very beginning of life, life is insignificant, then as they get older, they could very possibly have the mentality that no life is significant.
We've gone through an education system and we've been taught evolution, everything happens by natural processes. Well, it's just an animal anyway. You're just an animal. I'm just an animal. These people, they know that they're killing a human being, but we're just animals. And we have a right to do what we want to do, don't we? Don't we own our bodies?
Welcome back to a Matter of Life here at the 2015 March for Life at the Capitol, our nation's capital. We're joined now by Alex Schadenberg. He's from Euthanasia Prevention Coalition. Just honoring that this is a womb-to-tomb issue, respect for life. Alex, thank you so much for joining us. And if you would, tell our guests about your ministry, what you're doing, where you are.
Well, I'm very happy to be here with you, and at this time it's very important because we're involved with issues around euthanasia and assisted suicide. And as you're probably aware, assisted suicide has become a real issue that the media wants to champion now. They think that this is all about freedom, and it's not about freedom at all. When we're talking about assisted suicide, we're talking about giving a physician or somebody else the right and law to be involved with causing your death. This is not about people's self-determination and freedom. This is about giving somebody else the power over life and death. And we have to think about this very clearly. A lot of people are saying, oh, they think about, like, say, a terrible situation, say, oh, I wouldn't want to be like that. And it's, yeah, but do you want somebody else when someone's at a deep, dark time of their life, such as when they're depressed or going through a difficult time, now to be able to have a doctor suggest to them, oh, we can end your life, we can help you end your life?
Right.
It is an absolute abandonment of people in the time of need.
And such a contrast, I think, from the palliative care approach that many hospice organizations offer to an aggressive, that we have some right to determine when a person should die. We have no more right in life and death issues.
Yeah, so the concept of true dignity, like a real dignity, means that I'm actually caring for somebody. So the concept of pain and symptom management, of not allowing people to constantly be abandoned and alone. You know, part of our culture that is sad is not only at the end of life, there's far too many people who are now in a situation where they're in an institution, a hospital, or wherever, a nursing home, and they might be nearing death, but they're going through difficult times, but they're alone and they're lonely. And so you can see how this concept, oh, we can end your life, how it might have some resonance with many people, but at the same time, what does it actually do? It's about giving the doctor the right, or somebody else, because it's not always a doctor that has to be involved in it, somebody else the right in law to be involved with causing your death. So therefore, they now gain power over you, and when you're at the darkest, difficult time of your life, instead of receiving that support you need, good pain and symptom management, someone to care for you, they're offering you death.
Right.
And I think we see that happening more and more, where people are being pushed into doing things that might end their life early. It's not like, what would you want us to do? It's, you really don't want us to do anything, do you?
Yeah, so you get this sort of pressure, but you see, there's the one pressure to say, I'm not going to accept medical treatment. There's the second pressure, now we're going to end your life, which is even the next step. Right. But let's look at this. So there's a few states in the U.S. where assisted suicide has become legal. And a lot of people say, oh, well, it's only in a few places. Well, we have to understand, suicide prevention is a very important thing to talk about, to help people when they're in a very difficult time of their life. When someone feels they have no other way to go, suicide prevention is very important in a caring society. But then to say, oh, but in this case, we can help cause your death, we're actually countering the message of your life has value by saying, oh, now your life doesn't have value, we can end your life. And it goes further. The other side says, oh, well, this doesn't have a negative effect, it actually has a positive effect. Well, if you look at the stats in Oregon, the state where it's been legal for a while, on suicide, the suicide rate since the year 2000 has been steadily rising, and it's been rising faster than a national average. So those people who say, oh, it doesn't have a negative effect on the rest of the population, they're actually not looking at the real stats. The real stats show that at this moment, the suicide rate, regular suicide rate in Oregon is now 49% above the national average, which is much higher than it was in the year 2000. So you're actually seeing a suicide contagion effect. But further to that, what does it do to people who are going through disabilities? People who already feel devalued by our culture, right? What does it do to someone who's experiencing elder abuse? We know elder abuse is rampant in our culture. Sadly, with our aging population, we've been noticing that, in fact, elder abuse has become a great scourge on the culture. And yet, when someone's experiencing elder abuse and then they ask for assisted suicide, is that about free choice? Can you ever prove it's about free choice? No, because we've given that power to somebody else to be involved with causing that person's death. And remember, they only ask for it, other than the very, very few radical autonomists, they only ask for it because they're in a very difficult time and needing help and support. And instead, we're abandoning them to death.
And telling them that we don't care. Go ahead, kill yourself.
When you think about people with disabilities, it really affects me. I have a son who's autistic, so I've been involved with the disability community a fair amount. But of course, autism's a minor disability compared to what a lot of people live through. And the reality is that there's a lot of social discrimination that's already existing within our culture. People say, oh, I wouldn't want to be like that.
Right.
What does it say to someone when you say, I wouldn't want to be like that? And then when you legalize assisted suicide and someone says, well, there are other options, when they're talking about actually, you could end your life, Think about it, how it really devalues people who need help. And that's what it's about. We can be a caring culture or we can be a killing culture. It's our choice.
Exactly,
and I think
that's what it is. We became the killing culture because it's inconvenient to care for our elderly or expensive nursing home, or it's people look at you as an inconvenience. But Mother Teresa said it so well: when we devalue life at the beginning, at its earliest stages, we will devalue life. And how well said. And we've seen that domino effect from abortion now to active euthanasia, and it is so sad. And I can only say, I know my mom died at her home 2 years ago, and what a privilege it was for my brothers and sisters, for our children, and for our grandchildren to have said goodbye to Grandma and I love you, and to watch good hospice type care, and to realize that to her last breath, my mom was sacred to us.
So a lot of people don't realize that in the United States right now, there are a lot of states that are right now debating the issue of assisted suicide.
Right.
It's become one of those tidal wave issues, and it's the effect related to the sad death of Brittany Maynard last November. The fact is that people have to really understand, they have to really think it through. So where we all tend to agree as human beings is we all sort of fear a bad death. And that's where this is coming from. There's a lot of people with good intentions who say, oh, well, I wouldn't want to go through that. And we can understand that. The answer is not killing you.
Right.
The answer is how we care for the other. That's what makes us better, and that's what truly helps the other person. The fact of it is we're in a society all together, right? We live together, we live for the common good together. But if you give somebody else the power to be able to be involved in causing your death, and will that ever be abused? I'm just going to just give you one little story. There was, in Switzerland, they have assisted suicide. And an Italian man, they have an assisted suicide clinic in Switzerland where people go worldwide to. An Italian man went there thinking that he was dying, but he had a wrong diagnosis. So they found in his autopsy that he wasn't sick at all. He died by a lethal dose, but he wasn't sick at all. Why? He was going through a terrible time. He needed support. He didn't need death, but by death you couldn't take it back. He's gone.
Alex is actually from Canada.
That's right.
But he knows a lot about the U.S. euthanasia
assisted suicide. Yeah,
issues.
Absolutely.
Is there a difference in what's happening in Canada versus the United States? Are we moving faster than Canada?
Okay, so in Canada right now, there's a big push to legalize euthanasia, lethal injections. So, in fact, there was a bill in Quebec to legalize euthanasia, and it was euthanasia, not assisted suicide. So what is the difference? In euthanasia, the doctor would lethally inject you. In assisted suicide, the doctor would give you the lethal dose, but technically you take it yourself. Now, why are these things similar? Both cases, somebody else is directly involved with the cause of your death. In the case of euthanasia, it's actually physically doing it, which would be defined currently in Canadian law in almost every state. Euthanasia is homicide, right? Because someone lethally injects you.
Right.
This is direct and intentional. This is not, and it's not about giving someone too much pain medication either. It's not about that. Right. They don't use that. They use a barbiturate. It's very different. It's intentionally to kill. Assisted suicide is when they're involved with it, they give them the lethal dose and they take it themselves technically. But in both cases, you're dealing with people at a very difficult time in their life, and you're having somebody else having the legal power over them to be able to be involved with causing their death. And it's never a good thing.
Right.
Never a good thing.
No, it is not. No.
The fact of it is that in the U.S. right now, there is a bit of a tidal wave coming because of the recent media attention from Brittany Maynard, and that's a fact. And we understand that California just announced an assisted suicide bill. There's been big debates going on all over the U.S. And there's a lot of people who aren't aware yet of even what it's about. And they're thinking, and there's a lot of confusion. Some people think about assisted suicide and they think, oh, isn't that the same as withdrawing treatment and dying a natural death? No, it's very different. It's a huge difference. It's a big difference to kill me with lethal doses than to allow me to die naturally. It's a huge different thing. And on top of it, it should have never anything to do with palliative care. Good palliative care is about caring for me. It's about allowing me to die naturally. It's about caring for me so I'm not suffering and I'm dying with true dignity. Right. Assisted suicide is about killing me.
I would, if I would be talking with a patient who would be recently given a terminal diagnosis, usually cancer or heart failure, and if the question was posed to them, when I would pose the question, what is it that you fear most? Pain or being alone at the time of their death? And that's what we as a country need to look at, the fears of pain and being alone. We need to step up and, as a country, promote good legislation. We're going to...
Legislation that protects people. That's right.
Oh, okay. We have an interview with Dr. Alveda King that we're going to out at the march.
We caught her earlier.
We caught her earlier. Okay, let's. We're going to break now and go to the interview with Dr. King.
When I had my abortion, I did not know, they did not tell me that I was aborting babies. There was no ultrasound. I'm 64 years old today. And so my first abortion was done in a doctor's office. It wasn't in a back alley. There were no co-takers. This doctor worked with Planned Parenthood, and he did the abortion because he thought I did not need another baby. It was way. Planned Parenthood's advice to me, well, you're going through marital problems. You don't need another baby. We'll give you something called an abortion. It won't hurt as bad as pulling a tooth. Believe me, it hurt worse than pulling a tooth. And it hurt for many, many years. Those two procedures, which killed the children in my womb, damaged my body. I had to have cervical surgery to prevent full-blown cancer. I had a miscarriage and lost a child due to the damage of my cervix. And over the years, I deeply began to regret those. My grandfather, Martin Luther King Sr., who had convinced my mother not to have a D&E in 1950, not a coat hanger procedure, a D&E in a doctor's office. He convinced her that I was a little baby girl, she was pregnant with me, that had seen me in a dream 3 years before. He described me. My mother agreed with him. She and my father became the parents during their marriage of 5 babies. This same man convinced me in the mid-70s, Dr. Martin Luther King Sr., the father of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and my father, Reverend Alfred Daniel Williams King, not to abort another child. As a result, with corrective surgery from the damage done by both abortions and the miscarriage, I am now the mother of 6 living children, Philip and Jessica, and Raphael are in heaven waiting, and I'm going to take a long time to get there. And until then, I will be silent no more as we are healing the shockwaves of abortion. God bless everyone.
My name is Mary Vic Perez, and we're here reporting live from the March for Life. We're here with Javier. Javier, can you please explain what your organization believes in?
Our organization believes that every unborn child has the right to live, and that we're here protesting abortion. And this sign says it all. We are pro-life. I mean, not pro-choice or anything. So yeah.
Why not pro-choice? Why pro-life?
Because we believe in every instance that life begins at conception. So regardless of the instance, whatever circumstances, that baby has the right to live.
How do you feel America has changed this belief that a baby has a right to live from the start?
Well, I think it's become more about what women would like to do with their bodies rather than what children, or I guess unborn babies have the right to do. Yeah.
How do you feel this impacted you guys personally?
Personally, it's been eye-opening. It's great education. I didn't know much about it to begin with, but I came here and they taught me a lot, and they gave me both sides, so it's not just one-sided. And I was able to make my own decision, and I came out here to give my own opinion, and this is my opinion.
Okay, great. Yeah. Thank you very much.
No problem.
Back to you guys.
Joining us now is Jules Green. Jules is an abortive mother, a former abortion clinic worker. We are thrilled to have you here. Now today, you were just telling us that today you marched with Silent No More.
I did. I marched with Silent No More. They have, of course, you may be familiar with their signs. I regret my abortion. Right. I regret lost fatherhood for the men. Mm-hmm. They've started a new campaign called Healing the Shockwaves of Abortion. Mm-hmm. So I was marching next to a young lady who's in her teens that says, I mourn my lost sibling. And they gave me a sign to hold that said, I regret providing abortions. And I marched alongside a OBGYN physician, and his sign said, I regret performing abortions. So we're really looking at, the ripples in the pond, and not all the people it affects right away, but also the generational effects. And I was so proud to walk with them. It's not easy, but it was
Jules, maybe
wonderful.
you can share with the audience your own personal story, your own journey from being an abortion clinic worker, having had an abortion, to sitting here today and being the voice of that child.
Thank you for asking. I was a 17-year-old drug-using high school dropout when I found out I was pregnant, and I was pro-choice. But when I found out I was pregnant, I already thought of myself as a new mother. I wanted to keep the baby. I was going to get ready to parent. I stopped using drugs. I went to the library and I got a book out called Under 18 and Pregnant. I was really going to try to turn my life around. I even made a prenatal care appointment. But the people around me had other ideas about it's a horrible time for you. I mean, I'm sure you've heard other girls say the same thing. You feel like you have no choice. I thought I knew what I wanted to do until the pressure started. You know, and you know, a threat of abandonment to a young person who has nowhere else to go is very real. And so he made the appointment, and I went to the clinic, and I couldn't do it. I ran out of the parking lot, and nobody was there. You know, there was no 40 days for life then, you know, there was nobody there. So, so the pressure got a little bit more intense, and I ended up going back 2 days later. And I had an abortion 26 years ago, and it almost killed me. And not the surgery, but the emotional, you know, typhoon aftermath. I mean, within a few weeks, I was consumed with guilt, and I attempted suicide. And thank you, God, that I did not succeed. But I did spend a month in a hospital to recover. And you'd think that in that time, you know, with what I'd gone through, that I have the makings of a diehard pro-lifer, right? After what I just went through. And the opposite happened. I came out of the hospital more committed to abortion rights and abortion on demand, even though I knew I was intuitively pro-life for myself.
Right.
So I think what I was doing, and especially working at the clinic then, I was an escort. I marched in DC in April of '89 for the Reproductive Rights March. Like strange things that your mind will do to try to give yourself the comfort level you need.
You needed to justify the action.
Yes, that's the word I was looking for. Yes. So then I work at the clinic as an attempt to justify what I did. And also surround myself with people who thought abortion was okay, because maybe then I'd believe it too, you know, even though I never did. So, but no, I worked at the clinic for 5 years, and I didn't leave because I became pro-life. I left to go to grad school. It just happened that way, that life took me in another direction. I became pro-life about almost 5 years ago. Can I tell you? Can I tell you what changed my mind?
I was going to say, was it some person or some event? What made you change?
It was, I had a girlfriend who had agreed to be a surrogate, and she was in a surrogacy support group. So she would share with all of us girlfriends, like, oh, here's what's going on. And there's one girl in the group, oh, she's complaining because she's carrying twins. And then she said, this one girl in the group, the genetic testing done on the baby she was carrying came back positive for Down syndrome. The baby girl would be born with Down syndrome. So she was offered payment of her contract in full to abort. And she did. And that was it. It was like, it was a true aha moment. It was an epiphany. You know, the light bulb goes off and I'm like, that's wrong. And once I could say that abortion was wrong, all abortion is wrong on a fundamental level. And it was, I got goosebumps just sharing the story because, you know, to be able to, after my history and working in a clinic and marching for abortion rights, I'm like, the first time I said I'm pro-life out loud was a big deal for me.
It must have, like, how did it feel? Because you had already journeyed into an abortion clinic.
Well, I got to tell you, the first thing I did was like, is there anyone else who's been like that deep in the trenches like I was, and then come out the other side? So of course I went to Google and I typed in abortion worker pro-life, and Abby Johnson comes up. And her book had been released 10 days before my epiphany. So I bought her book, I read it in 24 hours, I emailed her, like, I was like, wow, like, and now there's so many of us that if you type in former abortion clinic worker, pro-life, I am so happy to say there's going to be like a list of 15, 20 people. It's awesome. It's awesome.
Yeah.
And we're a support system for each other too, because, you know, I get nightmares and flashbacks, and, you know, and I really, they're the only other people who would understand.
Right. For those of you who don't know, Abby Johnson ran the largest abortion clinic in Texas, and her book
Unplanned. Yeah, she had a conversion experience while still working there. It took me 20 years, unfortunately, but yeah, she had a very profound.
All in God's time. You listen to
Indeed.
her, you heard the Spirit speaking,
Indeed.
and you have become voice. Yeah. Jules, I think that everybody out there listening, you listen to Jules' voice and her heart, the joy that she experiences now, having gone through the journey but come to this conclusion of being I am pro-life, of giving voice to the unborn and defending life. But she also speaks to women who are gripped with fear and that fear of abandonment, or overwhelmed with what would it be like to go through this alone as a single mom. I think your voice speaks to women who are facing that fear, Jules.
I hope so. And I think the other thing we need to do in the pro-life movement is, we all know about pregnancy resource centers, right? If I had known when I was 17 and when I worked inside the clinic, of course we thought pregnancy resource centers lied to women. We thought, oh, they're going to give you a bag of diapers, honey, and then and send you on your way. And I think we sort of need to toot our own horn more about that, which I know isn't quite Christian. We're not supposed to, let the right hand know what the left is doing. But I think that getting the word out about what pregnancy resource centers can provide can really help people when they're faced with those kind of difficult, I feel like I have no choice.
We know that there are, that's why so many women get abortions, because like you, they've been pressured into doing it even though they don't want to. And you're right, we need to get the pregnancy resource centers out there so that the women know there is an alternative. They don't have to kill that baby.
You don't have to. You don't have to. And one of the best signs I ever saw in front of an abortion clinic, I've been to pray a couple of times. It's still kind of hard for me, again, all in God's time. It's kind of hard to be there. But one of the best signs I saw, it just had 4 words on it. It was, "Let us help you."
Let us help you.
And I thought, isn't that, that's all you really need to see, Yeah. Here's somebody who doesn't know me, who's praying for my baby and wants to help me, let us help you.
Well, Jules is a powerful voice, a little girl with a powerful voice, and speaking for her own
and
child,
a beautiful
for the
smile.
unborn.
You look like you are at peace with your life now, and I'm very happy for that.
Thank you, and I hope I can share that with other women as well, talking about, working through the consuming guilt that can happen after going through an abortion, or if you even just drove your best friend to the clinic, or anything you had to do in and around the abortion industry, participating. Exactly, that there's healing, and also that we in the movement will welcome you. We want to help. We want to help you.
We're not here to judge.
Too.
We're here to help.
Exactly. Because really, conversion is real, and some of the best voices we have in the pro-life movement is people who've been through it.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Oh,
Thank you
Jules,
for coming.
I thank you so much. We are going to go out to the march now. Mary Vic Perez caught up with marchers earlier, and let's take a look at some of Mary Vic's interviews. Awesome. Jules, thanks.
Productions. Hey guys, what part of organization are you guys from?
From St. Marie Parish in Manchester, New Hampshire. Holy Family Academy is one of the schools.
Okay, great. And what drives you guys all the way here to Washington to March for Life?
I'm going to let you speak.
Well, we want to we don't want abortion to happen anymore, and we're all pro-life, so we're come here to march.
And as a child, how do you understand this whole process? What do you get out of it?
What do you mean? Like,
it's having a baby. What do you understand out of it?
Well, it's not something that you can just kill. It's a baby, and it's not just a bunch of cells put together. It's a real person, and you can't just kill it.
Great, thank you. How do you feel? One more question. How do you feel that Roe versus Wade, a trademark case, changed the way that they rule over abortion nowadays?
Roe versus Wade has been the downside of our United States of America, really. We need to get back to building a culture of life. And we're here to start and we will never, ever give up.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So this is Mary Vic Perez once again, reporting for you live from the March for Life. So ma'am, what drives you all the way down here to Washington?
I came to join all my brothers and sisters to speak out for those that can't speak for themselves, the unborn and the elderly.
Great. And why do you say that they don't have a voice?
Well, the unborn are obviously not able to speak, and the elderly are sometimes dependent on those of us that can move and talk, and that's why we're here.
How do you feel that America has changed the thought of life, of allowing a child to have life?
Well, there's a lot of disrespect for children with the amount of abortions that are performed every year, and disrespect for the elderly. We sometimes ignore them, and we're thoughtless in our approach to them.
How do you feel Roe versus Wade changed the way we judge abortion cases?
It's made life less valuable because it takes nothing more than a decision to wipe away a little baby in the womb. And with that kind of disrespect for life, Roe versus Wade opened the door, and we need to speak out, all of us, the young, the old, and try to make a difference by overturning this decision.
Okay, great. What organization are you with?
I'm with St. Ignatius Catholic Church in Hickory, Maryland.
And how has this impacted you guys personally, do you feel?
By coming here, we're all supporting each other and giving witness to the fact that we're pro-life.
Great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Back to you guys. This is Mary Vic Perez reporting from the March for Life. We are here with Susie Apel. Susie, what drives you down here to Washington?
Well, we're down here because we think that all life is worthwhile, all life is defendable, and that everybody has a right to have a chance at life.
How do you feel that America has gone away from those beliefs that life has the right to live?
Well, I think that there's a lot of confusion about what a woman's needs are. I think there's a lot of wrong information about what help is available to women. And so I'm here to stand for life and also to stand for women, that there is great help available, that I know that women suffer terribly, physically, emotionally, in many different ways. And we're here to stand for them, also to know their suffering is real and that there's help available. And that's another part of why we want this to end, because we know the impact, the shockwaves that it's sending across society.
And what does this mean to you on your sign? Mary Wagner, prisoner of conscience?
Mary Wagner is a woman who has sought to help women by going into pregnancy centers with red and white roses to offer them help. And she went into a clinic that it was not allowed for her to go in. She was arrested and she spent over 2 years in prison because she would not agree to stay 100 yards, I think, away from the clinic entrance. So she stayed in jail. She was released in May after over 2 years, and on Christmas Eve she was rearrested. So she's back in prison now, and this quote tells about how she has denied her own legal counsel now and has decided to be silent on behalf of the children, in silence for them that have no ability to speak, and in friendship. So I'm trying to raise awareness of this woman who's been tremendously courageous, and I deeply believe that we need more people willing to make these kinds of sacrifices to change the way things have gone. There was supposed to be a vote today in the House regarding the Pain Capable Act that would limit abortions based on when a baby feels pain. And 2 women, Republican senators, spoke out and said they needed to change their mind because they were concerned about the votes of women and young people. And just take a look around here. I think they're greatly mistaken if they think that they need to turn back a law, turn back their defense of a law that would protect babies that are feeling pain because they're concerned about women and young people. There's going to be 1 million people down here, a lot of them women, a lot of them young, and they're making a big mistake. This is going away, and it's time for us to do what's really right for women, really going to help them and help society.
How do you feel that participating in marches like these will make a change?
I do think it'll make a change because when these young people come here from all over the country and they see that they have many friends from all around that have the same values as they do, they're strengthened and they're encouraged. And these marches are not the same as they used to be. They're not saying just come and march. They're saying go home, get involved, stay involved, and make a difference so we can turn this around.
Great. Thank you very much. Back to you guys.
Thank you all for joining us for this second annual A Matter of Life, live at the March for Life. I thank all of you for joining us. We're going to conclude with a little wrap-up session. And when we talk about the pro-life generation, I want to introduce our production team, members of the production cast, who were up at 2 o'clock this morning, traveling here from Pittsburgh and Philly. I'll have each of you introduce yourselves. And these were the girls you see out there interviewing, and thank you for being part of it.
I'm Destiny.
I'm Sarah.
Mary Vic here.
And I'm Amber Veras.
Mary Vic, you came from
Philadelphia.
And Destiny, you were here from Pittsburgh, aren't you? These are members of River Song Productions team, and they have done, they're young professionals who have done such an incredible job in these past 2 years. Their interviews have been beautiful. They've picked those people that can speak for life, in defense of life. I am so pleased. Tell me a little bit, what was your experience out there today as you interviewed people? What was the feeling, the climate out there, and what kind of interviews did you get?
Well, it was definitely a lot warmer than it was
last
year,
year.
so that was pretty pleasant. But you know, comparing it from this year to last year, I mean, it's like you kind of can't compare it, because it's like there's so many different people that you might not have had the chance to interview that you had the chance to interview this year. And you know, a lot of those people are just so passionate about what they're saying. It's like you can't help but just want to just look deep into their eyes and just like I completely understand. One person who I interviewed, I think it was Pastor Rodriguez. He was just so spiritual in his words and pumped up and everything. And it was definitely, he was my favorite interviewee for sure.
Really?
Yeah.
Good. We'll look forward to seeing that again too.
Yeah, well, I was...
Mary Vic, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I was interviewing the general public, and it was great seeing how even kids are integrating into this project, and also people spoke about other marches that are going on around the world. Never did I think, for example, if you would have asked me last year, I would have been like, oh no, this is the only march for this, but it's growing. You can see how people are growing in their thoughts, how people are growing in their actions, and how overall there are more organizations and more help. So it's really great seeing that change. Also, how willing people are or how open they are to speak about their opinions as well.
Right, yeah.
Which
I
was a
think
major
that's
change
a great point. Yeah,
from
people
last year.
know they're in a supportive environment, and
Mhm.
they can speak about their
Mhm.
experiences and
Yeah.
their journey.
Yeah, it was great. And also, something that I noted differently from last year was that there were also people that just were not interested. We were trying to get people that were not necessarily part of the march, but were just walking on the side, and they just looked, and we were like, oh hey, can we get your opinion? And they were just like, oh no, sorry, I'm busy. Or so you can see the different sides of the play here.
Yeah.
That's something different that I noted from last year.
Yeah, wow. Thank you. Thanks so much for the journey you took to be with us
Of course,
today.
of
And
course.
you have done such a splendid job. I'm just
Thank
really
you.
honored to be on the team with you.
Thank you. Thank you. Same here.
Well, this was my first year at the March for Life, and I was honestly so excited
But when it came time to interview the first person, I was honestly so intimidated. Really, because they're just like these big politicians, and like, but I feel like after I interviewed them, like you realize that we're all here for the same reason, for the same cause. And, you know, I feel like the unity that we have is so inspirational, like to see all these people out here, you know, for one reason, to spread awareness and to stop, you know, abortion. It was beautiful. I'm really glad that I came.
Thanks so much. Really, it means the world to me, and I'm just so impressed with the professionalism and the dedication of all of you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes. Tell us what you got to do today.
Oh. Well, I was holding a clipboard, but no, I was holding the release forms for the interviews. But
that's very important.
Yeah.
Without Sarah, there would be no interview.
That's right.
There you go.
Tell people what River Song Productions actually was.
Yeah, River Song
Good.
Productions.
Exactly.
But I think, guys, okay, I think for me, this year, something that I noticed was I've been coming to the march since I was 6 years old, and every year, I mean, since I was little, I've noticed more and more things about it that are different every year, and things are always changing. And something that I noticed this year was we were walking around getting interviews, and I saw this little boy. He looked like he was like 3 years old, and he had the most adorable eyes I've ever seen. But he's wearing a pro-life hat, and I was like, people are getting it. Like, parents are bringing their kids and showing that, like, this isn't like just a slogan. Like, we really are the pro-life generation, and like, we are really going to make a change and a difference.
Yes, you are.
Well, thank you all, the production team of River Song Productions. They helped with broadcasting today and did an incredible job. Carol, thank you for co-hosting this show.
It's been my pleasure.
I like
love
this. This
yes.
was great. And you know, the things that Carol and I, the message that we bring to you is to be pro-life is something that you do every day.
Yes, it is.
I encourage you to stay tuned and focused on, is it National Right to Life website?
nrlc.org.
Yeah, NRN as in Nancy, rlc.org. It keeps you abreast of what's going on in the political arena, and those times that you need to call your representative, your congressman, your senators, and urging them to vote pro-life, holding our politicians to task and saying, you know, we are a pro-life nation and we want pro-life legislation.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Thank you all. The one thing I do want to say, because it's 50 years from Selma, and this is a civil rights movement, and we will continue to march until we see an end to Roe versus Wade. Thank you all for being with us. A Matter of Life, Marianne Lahan.
You didn't tell them. They're going to see a clip from your video. The voice of John.
The theme of this year's show is Every Life is Special, and here's a clip from The Voice of John, available at thevoiceofjohn.org. And you know, I do want to say this, that we want to continue to provide you with programming like this. And in order to do that, we need your support, and we need your support in prayer and your financial support. So please look at the screen and make your contribution to River Song Productions so that we can continue this message.
We have a beautiful little girl who is 10, and her name is Emma, and she is just the most amazing little person in the world. She's changed our life in ways that I could never have imagined. She's made me a much better person than I ever was before. And she has multiple disabilities. We didn't know that at first, and the doctors didn't even know that at first. Her pediatrician knew at 2 days old that there was something a little awry. Her head was small. And we came later to learn that is actually called microcephaly, which means small brain or small head.
As first-time parents, we were very excited to learn that we were expecting a baby. At 4.5 months, we went to see our baby on the ultrasound and have our doctor's appointment. And we were overjoyed as parents looking at this little baby on the ultrasound. We didn't know that there was something wrong until the doctor said, "Oh, I better go and get someone to make sure that what I'm seeing is correct."
If I were that parent who had the prenatal testing and was told that information that my child would have Down syndrome or some other genetic disorder, I would say your world is going to change in ways that you can't even imagine. And not all of it is bad. These children and adults with disabilities, they bring something to life that you just can't even imagine is possible before they come into your life. There's a depth to life that they bring that I didn't know existed before. I lived very fast, very career-driven. I worked hard. I played on occasion. I worked more. But I didn't slow down. And that is something that Emma has really taught me. That there is so much to life that we miss in our typical lives because we are able to. But when you're given a child with special needs, you learn to appreciate things that you just totally took for granted before.
The doctor came in and he looked, and what felt like a lifetime for us was just a couple minutes to find out that our baby was a boy, which we were so excited about. But he had so many abnormalities that the doctors said that he would not walk or talk or feed himself or play and run like the other children would do. We were heartbroken, absolutely heartbroken.
Emma is 10 and started to walk on her own in December when she was 9 years, 8 months, and 1 day. Not that anybody's counting. But it was something that was just so awesome. And if she were a regular kid and she walked at 18 months or 2 years, we'd be like, oh yeah, woo, she walked. But I think having seen Emma walk at that age, it's something that has been so amazing to us, but also a gift to other people too. And I think that's the coolest thing is we get used to seeing such small incremental progress that even sometimes we kind of take it for granted after she's accomplished something. It's a gift that she gives us all. So if you're a mom who has just been told that you're going to have a child with special needs,
it's not the end of the world.
It's not the end of the world. It's the beginning of a whole new world.
Exactly.
It's an amazing adventure that you're going to be on, and there is an adventure to it. But there's a lot of joy. There's a lot of joy, and you get to experience so much about people that you would not have imagined. It's amazing how good people really are.
The doctor said, we would like to set you up for genetic counseling to decide what you would like to do with this baby. My husband and I looked at each other like, you must be crazy. What do you mean, what we're going to do with this baby? We want to do with this baby, we want to bring him home and raise him and to love him and give him everything that he needed for as long as God would give him to us. I was completely amazed at how quickly the doctors were ready to just abort a child because maybe something was wrong with him.
I tell you, the good days, 10 to 1, outweigh the bad ones. Farmer. You work it out like any other problem, like any other issue in your life. You got to work it out. You cannot come first anymore. And that goes with any parent. I don't care what what the ability or disability of the child is. You need to live for the kids now. The kids need to be your number one priority.
When Trevor was born, we held him, we loved him, we kissed him. We looked at him. There was absolutely nothing wrong with him. We prayed and prayed and prayed for a healthy child, and God gave us a healthy child. We did not know what he was going to be like. Trevor's almost 15 years old, and he is the most amazing young man that I have ever met. God has a special plan for him.
We thank God for her all the time. We often say that we are glad God chose us to have her, because she has just made us a complete family now. We just, she's not my disabled daughter. She's my daughter with a disability.